Lifting up, not down. This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your
Only
day.
5 days to December. Good morning and how you doing? Welcome to Monday. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation right here on Spice FM. How you doing, Nduoko?
Good morning, Eric. How now?
How you day?
I day. How body?
I day.
Okay, good.
The body inside the clothes.
Did you sleep well this weekend?
Yes, I did. The moments when I was sleeping, I slept well.
Fantastic.
And when I was awake well. City Muga, how you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Yeah, you had a good weekend?
Yes.
Rested as usual?
Yes.
You did what you do with your weekend?
Yes.
Good.
As much of nothing as I possibly can.
Very good.
Yes.
Jerry Thorne,
Good morning.
how you day?
Good.
Let's take a look at the headlines. What do you have, Jerry?
Uhuru Raila to host Bombers talks on BBI. This is county commissioners. They send invitations by SMS to politicians, professionals, asking them to turn up for Wednesday's public launch of the report as Ruto warns against threats. Very interesting one, BBI. Of course, there were samples of the BBI doing the rounds over the weekend. As to whether that was the real thing or not, we'll wait and see until we have it officially launched.
Mm-hmm. So it's coming out tomorrow, and then the president and the prime minister, according to that story, they are going to now present it to the public at Bomas of Kenya.
Apparently so.
Okay, that's a good one. What do you have, Ndu?
Ruto ready for prime minister job, according to his allies. And this is the front page of the Star. Tanga MPs tell Uhuru that they will reject the BBI if it changes executive structure. Looking then further on page 4-5, talking about the intrigues of that. But I think probably maybe taking more importance is the fact that the death toll in West Pokot hits 43. And there was a landslide over the weekend in relation to, the flooding that we are seeing cross country. But what happened in West Pokot, basically the county was split in two. And people died as a result of that. And the weatherman warns of more rain. West Pokot Governor John Long, I can never say his name.
Nyangapuo.
Yeah, that one announced that 6 bodies were recovered on Sunday morning, raising the death toll. He said that the Kitale-Lodwar highway that had been rendered impassable due to heavy rains that pounded the area on Saturday night had been cleared and that transport was back to normal. A team of engineers from the National Highway Authority carried out repairs on the road. So, they're looking at, mitigating circumstances, but at the same time, the rain promises more. So, lives were lost, unfortunately, and more rain is coming.
This is a tragic story.
It is. It's big, major.
It is so big.
They're calling it the Indian Ocean dipole.
Right.
Was it dipole? Or the Indian Ocean El Nino?
It's El Nino of the Indian Ocean, right?
Yes. And they claim that it happens, it occurs every 10 years or so, and it's catastrophic. Yes.
And we can see, actually.
It is catastrophic.
We can see it is catastrophic because you can imagine.
The number of people who've actually now just perished here, those that have suffered. There's a story here on the Standard, page 3. I lost 3 children in the landslide horror. There's a story of Leah Chamne, 23, who sits on her bed at the Kapenguria County Hospital, lost in thought. She's among survivors of the landslide that hit Pokot South on Friday night, leaving over 50 dead. Hers is a tale of horror shared by those that made it out of the muddy tombs on a night that death visited several villages. She says she lost 3 children.
And they're predicting that it will continue until early December.
The rain.
Yes. It'll be intermittent. There'll be intermittent sunshine, but the rain will keep pouring.
Whoa.
Yeah.
The Standard has a 2-page story. They're saying from today they'll be doing a lot of in-depth analysis on why your electricity bill is not coming down anytime soon, plus the irony of a monopoly choking in losses. So, page 4-5, it's only the power business in Kenya that has defied the laws of demand and supply as consumers pay more amid surplus in production. So there is surplus. For each unit of power, consumers pay an average of 23 bob, or 31% more than they did just 6 years ago when a unit cost 16 shillings.
We are told there's a surplus. Just like we are told the economy is growing.
There's more production, that's for sure.
Yes,
but
there is.
there is, and now it's connected to more people. But bills are going even higher. Since 2014, the average cost of electricity bill has risen by 37%, outpacing inflation that has averaged 6% in the last 5 years. For instance, 200 units of power cost you 4,600 bob in October this year. It was 3,300 in 2014. Imagine. It's only the power business that has defied these laws of supply and demand.
I'm sure if we give it time, we'll find other sectors of the economy that are also defying what we want to consider to be basic logic. Yes, but it's a thread, it's a trend. You can see a pattern, and and more of the same will occur.
Right. Looking at other stories on the front page of the Daily Nation, Pastor James Nganga at Neno, his is the word, apparently. CT might like this. Under his spell, hundreds of congregants cheer him on as he commands them and fall in awe as he exorcises demons at a fee. Yeah, so you pay him to, get rid of your demons or maybe do something better.
Are churches taxed?
No.
Nope.
They should be.
They should be.
Yeah, because unless Nganga is trying to tell us that he has special powers, if the powers purportedly are from God, they come free.
So they come free from God.
Yeah, so you cannot charge for them. It's like charging for sunlight.
Right.
Sunlight tax.
And is the promise made but kept? That's another question. Is the demon gone? There's a demon exercised in permanency.
First of all,
the rears is under your head, as it were.
Did the demons actually exist
in
In the first place, right?
Yeah, because it seems it's like a one-stop shop. He determines their existence. He exercises them, determines that they've been exercised. Yes. And is there a verification process?
That's what I'm saying.
No.
Are we sure that they've gone, or did they just take a siesta?
You can feel it.
Back later.
You can feel emptiness.
You can feel emptiness.
Where the demon used to be.
Yeah.
Emptiness. What's that feeling like?
Well, get demons first. When they're exercised, you will know.
I thought that was the sort of feeling you had when you're ignorant.
Oh, well, okay. Let me help you a little bit more. Another proud moment for the greatest. Eliud Kipchoge easily retains his title as the IAAF Male Athlete of the Year, and that title was awarded him over the weekend. And yeah, I think it's a great moment, definitely. 159 contributed to that. He's one of the greatest.
Hey, that's very good.
Another proud moment for the greatest.
Yep. For the second year running, he's the best male athlete globally. It's a very good thing for him. I think he's had a sterling career. Page 19 of the Standard, Nyeri, and then you'll come to you. Idle dispensaries host bats as patients' pain persists. This is in Busia County, which the county government spent several millions building new dispensaries. Nearly 20 dispensaries that have been completed but are yet to be open to the public. This has resulted in patients trekking for up to 7 kilometers to access medical and maternal health care in health centers or sub-county hospitals. So they've put up the infrastructure, but they haven't actually equipped the infrastructure. There are no personnel for the infrastructure. We have buildings, we don't have doctors, we don't have equipment. Busia, 20. Yes, Jerry, you heard something.
Actually, I was in shock when I was taking that sigh. I was breathing in. A new gang christened 86 Battalion is believed to be behind some violent robberies that are being experienced in Mombasa. And the headline here on page 6 is 10 injured in Nyeri, Kisumu attacks. The victims also lost their mobile phones and money to the criminals. So tension is high in Kisumu and Nyeri in Mombasa following renewed attacks by machete-wielding gangs that injured 10 people yesterday. The victims suffered deep cuts on their heads, hands, legs, and other parts of the bodies. One of the victims had his legs chopped off by the criminals. According to the eyewitnesses, we had to put the leg in a box while carrying the victim to the hospital after he was attacked early in the morning, said Henry Kahindi, a resident. So, I mean, this is quite shocking that you have a gang that's terrorizing a whole area and chopping people's legs off. It's a new gang called the 86 Battalion. It's believed to be behind the deadly attacks that have left residents living in fear. Eyewitnesses and victims said the gang members were young men. Andrew Murray, who was robbed of an unknown amount of money in his phone, is among those who are nursing their injuries at the Coast General Hospital. They cut my leg and slashed me on the head. I am in a lot of pain. They said so. They were so many, Mr. Murray said from his hospital bed.
So remember the other time when there was a similar attack in the same area, and Matiang'i had to go down to Mombasa and he made some changes to the police service. So clearly, the changes have not borne any fruit, because now the gang is even doing graffiti on walls. 86, we live here. And they are running around with machetes, chopping.
Politically motivated, I'm sure.
This
If we're
is
to
madness.
dig further into this, you'll see there's actually some turf wars, perhaps, between two gangs, or there's some politics here. These aren't people just looking to destroy property and misappropriate property belonging to another. This is it's more organized than that, I think. For so many people to come together and attack people together, it seems like serious organized crime.
But why must it be politically motivated?
I just think it's something that could have been easily curbed if they wanted to. I think there's when I say politically motivated, I think it's turf wars, whether political or drug barons. There's something going on. I don't think these are people trying to steal money for themselves, for the betterment of their lives, so they can sell and become richer.
When
That's
there's
my
a
gut
narrative
instinct.
and there's a corresponding reality of many young people who feel disenfranchised, either through unemployment or otherwise, look at the history of the formation of gangs over the years.
But these people are attacking
This
people
particular
who are
one.
also disenfranchised.
Yeah.
They're going for young people. I don't think it's in rebellion.
And it's not. It's
When
this
have
gang
gangs only
issue is
targeted one
isolated.
particular group, really? The first people that gangs tend to attack are the people nearest to them.
Yeah, how they organize.
And I think
there's
the
intelligence
graffiti
system
also
failure.
speaks volumes. I think there's a communication there that perhaps if we lived and understood the nuances within this community, we would perhaps be able to decipher.
Remember, this isn't the first time these gangs have reared their heads in Mombasa. No, they haven't. We've had them for a long time. And somehow the security apparatus and the intelligence apparatus do not seem to be able to either curb them or to do anything that would actually stop them. Because these aren't people who are not known. You think a gang can exist within an area where people live and people do not know who
people
are
know
who the
Of
members
course,
of the
people know
gangs
them
are.
by name, and I think they've also instilled fear to a certain degree among the residents in that area, so they're aware of who they are.
And the
But
security
these
forces are
are-
doing nothing.
These are pretty daring guys. I mean, they were caught sharing the loot and were ordered to surrender, but they advanced towards the officers. This is police officers they were advancing towards, ready to harm them. The officers opened fire at them, and it is suspected that several escaped with gunshot wounds. So these are pretty sort of daring people.
Crazy. Remember, you can download the Standard e-paper app from Google Play Store and Apple App Store, and the Standard has gone digital. Without just one subscription fee, either weekly, monthly, or annually, then you get to access all of Standard Group's publications everywhere, wherever you are on your digital platforms. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have Siti Muga, Nyeri Thorn, and Nduoko. Good morning. It's 6:15.
Spice and everything nice, everything nice.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Right, so we're broadcasting from Nairobi to Mombasa, 87.9, Kisumu 102.5, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret, 90.9 Nyeri, 97.7 in Malindi, and we're live streaming on Facebook as well, Spice FM KE. Our website is www.spicefm.co.ke, and our Twitter handle is @SpiceFMKE. Follow the hashtag conversation, the Situation Room. So it's a Monday, the day after the weekend. And of course, the weekend, a lot happens. A lot happens. People get pranked. You get people who actually are in police custody because they were arrested for doing things that they shouldn't have been doing. And then there are those who actually just got away scot-free.
Absolutely. I'm looking at drunk driving this morning and looking at what has happened over the last week. 10 days or so, especially with the removal of alcohol from the hands of police on the highway, different sobriety checks. And unfortunately, we've had quite a number of deaths. The last week alone, between Monday and Saturday last week, 15 people died directly from causes of drunk driving. I'm not talking about other people who died in other road accidents because of other reasons. Specifically because there was a driver behind the wheel who was drunk. 15 people lost their lives, and we're talking about Nairobi between Monday and Saturday last week. Now, within the same period, alcohol was removed from the roads. Now, the reason as to why alcohol was removed was because that these were being used as tools of extortion by police. That was the primary reason why they were removed, and not because that they had served as sobriety checks for individuals who, were on the road. And there was hue and cry to the fact that police were using this to extort money from Kenyans, and we left aside the whole issue of the fact that these folks were behind the wheel having been intoxicated. Now, if we want to look at the numbers, because we've not been able to collate for 2019, in 2018 12,985 people were involved in road accidents. 303,163 lost their lives. Out of that 3,163, 1,685 lost their lives due to drunk driving. The driver was drunk, hit another vehicle across the country. So we've lost half of that number due to drunk driving. And I am saying, yes, it has been criminalized in this country, but the process has to be taken a lot more seriously if we're going to save lives. I do not have the numbers in terms of, of the people who have been arrested or the accidents that happened. How many of these people then were, if they managed to survive, were taken to court and then, did their time or served? Because it is a criminal offense as far as what we know. Getting behind the wheel while intoxicated. Now, people lose their lives as a result of that. That is something even, much graver. But I'm saying that it is not taken seriously enough. You're able to bribe your way out of the deal if something does happen. And people have lost their lives over and over and over again. And these numbers are staggering. And I would shudder to think what it is this year, 2019, where we've seen an upsurge in the lives that have been lost. So I am saying this morning that the criminalization of drunk driving has to be taken more seriously if we're going to stem the deaths that we see that are occurring at such a high level in the country today.
So who removed the alcohols from the road? The same cops who were extorting?
Well, I think it came from higher up because there was hue and cry from Kenyans saying that, we are being extorted at these alcohol or what they want to call sobriety checks. And it was just wanton bribery by police to say, okay, yes, you're drunk, pay us a certain amount of money, but you still let these drunkards back on the road. So you take the money that you would, you take this money from them, but you still let them back on the street to drive, as it were. So they were saying, we're complaining, yes, I am drunk, but I pay you X amount of money, but then I'm allowed to go on my merry way.
There are those that were also complaining that those checks were causing traffic.
At 2 a.m. in the morning?
At 2 a.m. in the morning. So, the way I hear it, these are people who are basically complaining that they're being inconvenienced because they're being checked whether you're drunk. Why would anybody complain about that? Really? Because the point of having this alcohol check is to ensure that if there's another motorist on the same road that you're using who's intoxicated, they're removed from the road.
Right.
And then that ensures your own safety. And if you're intoxicated yourself, then how are you being extorted? You're basically
the problem,
accept that you're wrong and go to court.
So the removal of alcohol for me was a dent in the fight against having this done, because it served as a deterrent to some point. So people would take a cab when they,
when they drink.
Engaged. Yes, when they drank, basically. But now we're seeing that has been removed completely. So people don't have that issue anymore, because those who got away with it really did get away with it. And unfortunately, the numbers that we're seeing are really quite high, 1,600 in a year, because directly linked to, drunk driving. So I'm saying that we're not taking it seriously enough in terms of the criminalization of this.
So you're
so
saying
many lives have been lost.
That even when the alcohol was in place, and bribes, as you purport, were being given, there was a reduction in fatalities due to drunk driving.
Oh no, that I'm saying the absolute opposite, because even with that, look, on both sides here, alcohol blow would serve as a deterrent, but at the same time, it was not fulfilling its purpose, because still people would be checked, they would pay the bribe, and still go on their merry way, still while drunk.
But I thought, according to what you said, there was a reduction or there was an increase in fatalities once the alcohol was removed.
There was an increase, yes, still. There was an increase in fatalities since then, once alcohol was removed. But at the same time, that's because you have more people on the road, definitely, who are drunk. You still do.
Has there been an impact? Is there any documented impact since NTSA were removed from the roads? Because remember, we used to have NTSA
was removed
officers
last
as well.
year, right?
Yeah.
Well, yes, there was an upsurge since last year, and that was documented in terms of the numbers. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers. All we know is that they say there was data has been documented that there was an upsurge of accidents specifically linked to drunk driving since NTSA was taken off the roads last year. So, I mean, here we are with that situation whereby we're going into the festive season once again, and we're likely to see increased numbers of that. And unfortunately, without it being taken as seriously as I think it should be, then we're going to have serious problems.
We have an attitude problem, I think, in the country. Even the time when we have those alcohol blows, there are very many social groups that emerge telling people where to avoid. So people actually say,
avoid certain roads.
This road is lit. The guys are there. They're on the Thai road. They're on, this particular like Tok road. They're on the main highway. Avoid the Bunyala roundabout. If you can avoid Bunyala, they'll be there. So people actually are looking at where are the alcohol guys, and they're in the club. So they get out, they get into their vehicles, and they drive. You know very well that this could actually cause you your own death or physical disability, but all you're focused on is how to avoid the cops.
Indeed, the death of others. It's an interesting one. I think you're right, Eric. It's not a matter of policing this, because it can be impossible to police if so many people are drinking. We don't have enough cops. We don't have enough people in TSA. We can put deterrence there, which I think is what alcohol blow is. But of course, if we're working against them, we being the drinkers, against the cops, then we could always beat them with these WhatsApp groups. But I think something that was really reflective of what our attitudes towards drink driving was, there was a case that was brought forward when the breathalyzer tests first came forward, if you remember. And in that case, they argued that the breathalyzer rules, they were actually violating the motorists' rights and their self-dignity, and in turn, or as a result, they were violating the Constitution. So just our very attitude, as you say, towards drink driving. First of all, I think we discount the future generally as Kenyans. We don't think it will happen to us. We haven't seen the seriousness of it. We all know stories of somebody who's died from drink driving. Perhaps it's the value we place on human life. You'll find it in other countries, it's more an internal barometer that you have within yourself where you don't want to drink drive. It's not a matter of getting caught. So it's not an external monitor that's making you not drink drive. There's a shame that's associated with it. There's a stigma that's associated with it. In Kenya, you find there's a heroic there's an applause almost for, the more drunk you are, so drunk, and I still managed to get home. And did you see how drunk he was and he got home? There's something of an achievement in that to a certain extent. So I think, as you're right, it's an attitude that we need to change.
It's just an extension of impunity being cascaded down. It's manifesting itself in people disregarding authority, but it's a national pastime. We see the very top leadership ignoring court rulings. We see people in authority stealing government money. The cases are in the papers. People go back and forth. The people just seem to get on with their lives. So it's that let's call it an attitude for purpose of discussion, but
it's impunity.
It is impunity. The bribery is just a further manifestation. You will arrest me, I will bribe you, let me go, and I'll move on.
When the issue of NTSA actually was brought to the national discussion, it was the president himself who issued the order that NTSA should move out of the roads. Well, yes, NTSA's mandate is to come up with policies that regulate road safety, But then they were told, so your job is to come up with a policy, not to be policing people. Police is police. And I think there was a clash between the police and the NTSA because police officers were feeling that the NTSA were encroaching on their turf.
Not just encroaching. What was doing the rounds and what was being alleged was that the NTSA were even more exorbitant than the police. Their demands, if you were caught breaking any law, were far, far greater than that the police. The police apparently and the public had come to an understanding. It's like an unwritten law of what you would pay in order to be set free. The NTSA came and they raised the bar.
What I actually heard was the opposite of that. My experience with the NTSA stories was that when there are NTSA guys on the road, please just make sure you obey the law. Because you are going.
That's how
to
they
police
started.
station, you know?
They were strict with how they began their
Completely strict.
operations.
That's how they started.
They started it that way,
That
very
way, and
strict.
it was
and they
very
were,
true.
It was,
and-
yeah.
But then with the time that changed.
They also then were infected with this same disease
and then
that Cecilia talked about earlier. So, I mean, they started out, you would say, well, if that is an adjective you want to use to describe how the operations went. But then after time, it became diluted in how they were now able to, carry out the same mandate. And they began to receive.
They used to work alongside the police, remember? When
The
you
cops would tell you, unajua kuna mtu wa NTSA hapa.
Yes,
So if
exactly.
you have to check something, you've got to factor in that we have a senior, a superior body also on the road.
Yes, but then after a while, you just see NTSA vehicles without the police.
Doing their own checks.
Yes.
But why are we so accepting of this as a society? Why do we not find this abhorrent, or sort of why are we not repulsed by this sort of behavior? People die.
They do die, but you see, the death that doesn't just come to you on the roads. Death will come to you when you go to hospital. Death will come to you when a mosquito bites you. Death is around us all the time. So the narrative of death will not be a deterrent.
Yeah, but in this case, this is an individual who is causing it directly. As in, if they had not been operating in the way that they were, this accident would not have happened. In this instance, with the very different instances we had on the
impunity
road.
works on the mind. There's magical thinking attached to it, that it won't happen to you. You see, that's the thinking. Haven't you heard people joke and say that, when they drink, their car knows the way home?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a theory, actually, interesting. I wrote that down today. That's a theory that people have, that Makar knows the way home, which is absolute nonsense if you want to apply
Utter.
any kind of logic to it.
Utter and it's undiluted nonsense.
All right. So you're calling for... Sorry, Jerry.
No, I was just going to say, I don't think we can change this with trying to police it or with putting statutory instruments and so on, trying to enforce the law. I think this is a matter of shifting our mindsets as Kenyans. It's not something, we don't have the capacity to have a roadblock at every single road. We simply don't have that. And of course, with the way we work and WhatsApp groups and warnings and so on, it's us against them. We miss the point. So unless we change our mindsets, this is not ending anytime soon.
How do we get our mindsets to change? I think it should work in conjunction with something, with some tougher legal issues.
No. What you're looking at here, impunity, grows because of the power of example. When you abrogate powers to individuals and you give them the mandate to lead, they will lead. They will lead either by good example or by bad example. If, for instance, you find that people get away with preaching prosperity in churches, what will happen if nothing happens? That more people will come up preaching prosperity. They'll even apportion the power of God to themselves, like was being mentioned earlier on in the paper. Someone decides that they're the ones who are healing people. That again is impunity. So, if the leadership, cascade it in any way you like, have set the tone and the timber for a certain code of behavior, you may not think so, but the rest of the country will follow suit. If you have a situation where people who have come out and, let's say, for instance, have been whistleblowers, and you see them suffering for actually taking that position of moral authority, they suffer for it. What you're encouraging people is not to whistleblow. And what you're encouraging is for people to do the complete opposite of whistleblowing. So it's a culture that we have. So if you're talking about changing behavior, it isn't even a question of changing leaders. This same process that we have where we are now arresting leaders and getting them to account, start at the top. When you start at the top, people understand that there's a price to pay for a certain type of behavior. But arresting people for drinking, that is not the problem, that's a symptom.
But we need to deal with that drinking thing.
The drinking is
Yeah,
not
yeah,
the
yeah,
the-
yeah.
the- Eric,
It may not be the problem.
the
but we
drinking
need
is
to
not the
deal with it.
problem. It's never been the problem. People drink. There was a time in this country when alcohol was in force, where the people were paying bribe. People understood. And where people drink, there'll be options. You'll find a taxi, there's someone who will drive your
Drive
car.
you home, right.
Yes, and you'll go in a taxi, your car will arrive home safely, you'll pay for the taxi, and these two others will drive back. And it was known. There was a mechanism, and people stopped this nonsense. Somehow it has come back.
So we need to start thinking of the solutions. So Nduoko this morning is saying that this criminalization is in place, yes, but it needs to be taken more seriously. We need to come up with more stringent measures of actually ensuring that we avoid incidences of drink driving on the roads, which have caused very many accidents, documented accidents, and quite a number. Let's start discussing solutions. It's 29 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. What's happening on the roads? Let's find out.
Spice and everything nice. Alright, okay. Spice it.
Spice up your life.
So
Traffic.
you're interested to know that a drunk driver this morning has knocked down someone on Mombasa Road, and there's a dead body past Gateway Mall on your way to town, and they're waiting for the police to come and sort that out. Let's move further afield to Thika Road, where another individual has been knocked off a motorbike and the car has taken off. And that individual is also lying on the road waiting to be picked up this morning. So 2 incidents. If you're approaching and there's traffic, that's the reason why. Okay, coming off of Waiaki Way from Kangemi to town is a smooth drive. There's not much traffic. Remember, the roads are wet this morning, so we have slippery conditions. We're asking you to be very, very careful. And so the word is being sent out for Thika Road and Mombasa Road for those 2 incidents of accidents. One as a result of a driver who was drunk, hit somebody, and then had the wherewithal to take off, unfortunately. Ngong Road is looking good. No sign of traffic at the moment, just slippery roads. So everybody please be careful. All right, Jogo Road has started. It's moving in a slow pace, but it's not so bad heading into the city center. Langata Road, there's traffic all the way. So please, as you're approaching, understand, please take it easy. You're going to have to wait it out because it's not moving as fast as you'd like it to. Let's see what it looks like in about half an hour around the rest of the city. It's wet. Please be careful. Send us a call or send us a message or give us a call, 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
It's Monday. On Monday, people have incidences and stories about what happened over the weekend, and many of them will involve cases of accidents that they saw, which were caused by drunk drivers. This morning, we already have 2 incidences
Right.
at Gateway Mall,
Yes,
on
on
Mombasa Road,
and one on Thika Road.
On Thika
Interesting
Road.
enough, coming off the weekend, and this is this morning too. So
I know
far.
of one yesterday, Sunday. So somebody is going to church, and she's turning off Limuru Road. And then a drunk driver actually just comes and then knocks her off. Car is written off, and the person was completely intoxicated. He was actually even trying to argue with police officers and saying, no, I will drive my car.
Right.
Even at that point, I'll drive my car. We need to come up with solutions. I think one of the things that, we need just to start thinking of is how to ensure that people don't get behind a wheel when they're drunk. Can that responsibility go back to where the drinking dens are, the drinking spots?
I don't know, but I know that a couple of years ago, one thing that seemed to make sense, just as CT was talking before we went on the break, and it actually seemed to have worked, because we even had the brewers, as it were, coming up with campaigns that insisted that you have, a designated driver, that you have somebody who will take you home. Yes, by all means, enjoy yourself and make sure that you are reaching home safely. So it's not just about you getting home safely, but it's about the safety of other people who happen to be on the road at the same time. So those campaigns actually made sense. There were taxis making sure that they were at establishments for, they were there, because they also took this seriously. So now at that point, I don't know if it is the value for human life that was taken up a notch, or that people wanted to make sure that they got home well, or they were just, interested in the furor of the whole campaign as, during a festive period.
I think there was that, and there was also the issue of having those very many alcohol spots. In fact, alcohol guys used to set up outside the bars
Right.
at 3 o'clock. So you know very well that clearly the guys are out here. So start thinking beyond that. So there's behavioral change campaigns that are being conducted by all the interested groups. Even Standard Group was actually participating in that. And then there's also seeing the police officers or the people who are actually there to enforce the law are visible.
To me, it's not something that should stop. It's not a campaign that we should remember, because we obviously know what the drinking culture is in this country. And when you look at that, you know what it is that people are going to do. Whether it's over a weekend, whether it's during the festive period, you already know what the culture is. So to me, this is not a campaign that should come and go for 3 to 6 months. It's something that should be resident over time for people to understand, look, this is not something that we can take as a joke, whether they have the value or not. It's something that we hope can be entrenched, because people are dying. Even without people dying, the injuries that are caused out of such accidents, and what then people have to go through for the rest of their lives in terms of spending money to make sure that their health is at optimum for what now they have left. We have children being orphaned. We have, parents being taken away from their children, not being able to fend for them, obviously because they're not there. When we look at those, perhaps it's making that information clearly visible and available for people to know that this is what happens. And I know in other countries you got down to the detail, and they would actually come up with the numbers and say, by getting behind the wheel when you are drunk, this is actually what you do. Taking, the life of a child, for example, taking the life of a parent, taking the life of a caregiver, this is what you do by getting behind the wheel when you're drunk. So that you take in that information when you're sober, you might make a different decision when it comes to getting behind the wheel when intoxicated.
I think also we see less people being convicted of these crimes. Of course, Kenya being what it is, the judiciary being as
Robust.
corrupt, actually, as it can be. Of course, most drivers, given how expensive cars are in Kenya, most drivers can afford to pay themselves out of such situations when they're caught up. So we don't have too many stories of people who've either killed somebody or been in an accident and actually gone to jail. And those would serve as an example, or indeed as a deterrent for others not to drink drive. If we had more of those cases that were highly publicized or given some airtime by the media. We don't have much of those. And I think that can be explained away by the fact that most people who are driving in the first place have quite a bit of money in Kenya, if it's your car. And as a result, you can afford to pay the judges off and get away with it.
Actually, even if you look at it, the penalty for it is a fine. So many people who are even arrested, even during the days of NTSA or alcohol, they are arrested, they end up in court the following day, and the fine is there, 10,000, 20,000, off you go. So if you're talking about conviction up to a point of jail.
Oh, I was talking about if you've been involved in an accident and actually killed somebody.
That actually caused
then,
death.
I'm saying there's not too many convictions that we see people going to jail for.
Publicized.
Because I think this is actually something that would act as a deterrent. And the reasoning behind this is that most drivers can afford to pay judges off.
And it happens like that. How does it work in the other countries as well? So we know, for example, you see those campaigns in the UK where the bar owners or waiters will tell someone, I think you've had too much, I'm not going to serve you.
Yeah, I'm not serving you anymore, or call
anymore.
a cab kind of thing,
Yep.
So,
Is it actually a legal thing? Is it a legal requirement for them
Well,
to do
for
that?
starters, the infrastructure there, the sort of, say it's London and you're out in a club at night, there's night buses, which are very safe, so you don't think of driving into central London for drinking escapades. Of course, there's the underground as well, which is 24 hours over the weekend, I think now. So, first of all, that in itself acts as a a deterrent, or it stops people from wanting to drink drive. Secondly, a lot of people maybe drink locally, which we're finding more and more in Nairobi, aren't we, where people aren't driving. When I was younger, if we were going out, you'd go out clubbing in Westlands all the way from wherever it is you live. Whereas now you can drink at your local bar, and there's quite a nice nightlife or enough entertainment to keep you in your local spot. It's not like before. So I think we've had less episodes as a result of that localization of areas, and that's also come about as a result, I think, of NTSA being there. People don't want to drive far to drink. So there has been some headway with NTSA. But I go back to the mindsets. When you say how does it work abroad, it's the stigma and the moral sort of repugnance, and it's very objectionable, the idea of getting behind a wheel when drunk, because you could be taking away somebody's life. So the fact that society would ostracize you if you did, those are the things that play on your mind. Not to say there's no cases of drink driving, but you'll see it in the papers, you'll see it in the news if somebody's been killed because of a drink driving accident. It's not going to be a tweet that comes today and is gone like we've just read out here in the traffic news. So it's something that's made a big deal out of. And I think it goes back to societal attitudes and mindsets. It's very different there. It's not fear of the police, because the police probably won't catch you if you're drink driving in the UK. It's highly unlikely. You don't have the setups that you have here, whereby you have NTSA and people waiting to catch you out. No, you don't have that. But you yourself, once you've reached an age of maturity, above 25, and it's not something you want to be doing personally. Anyway, So it's a matter of, transport system. And then I think just the value we place, or they place, on human lives, and the sort of backlash that you'd have from society if anything did happen. And also it's a disgusting thing to get behind the wheel when you're drunk, basically.
In other parts, like in the States, I think, where the DUI actually goes into your record, which docks you points.
Absolutely.
There's that system too in the UK.
And in Kenya now, we are actually digitizing our driving licenses as well. So when you renew a driving license today, you'll get a digital one. So I think this information should also go in there, so it becomes a punitive thing. So you're caught DUI, it goes into your record, and it means
you can pay somebody to remove it. The thing is, it's systemic. Like the whole thing is rotten. There's no getting away from it. I bet you can pay somebody to remove this from your records, even if it's digitized. So until, as CT says, until impunity and corruption is out, these are the symptoms. Sadly. And the symptoms now we see, they affect everybody, because even these leaders who are corrupt, their kids are just as prone to being hit by a drunk driver as anybody else. Usually with corruption and that sense of impunity, you don't think it will happen to me, it's not going to affect my family. But with drunk drivers, which is, we've made a very indirect correlation with corruption at the top, but it's there. But with drunk drivers, it could be your child. You, as the most corrupt leader, politician, it could be your child getting knocked down by one of these drunk drivers.
Or your child behind the wheel in this case. Sometimes when we have the younger age people, younger age behind the wheel, having been intoxicated, thinking that they could easily get away with it. So yes, I think if we got to the details of exactly what happens to somebody or someone who loses their life as a result of someone being behind the wheel while intoxicated, and getting to the details and making a big deal out of it, because it is a big deal. One life is lost, but now we're looking at 1,600 per year in this country as a result of drunk driving. If we took it as seriously as it is, or made it as serious as it is to people, to understand that why would you want to do this? To ask that question. Hopefully it would strike a moral chord.
Let me open up the phone lines now, so we can also get your opinion on this. How do we stop drink driving on our roads, or how do we reduce the incidences completely? 0719 012 600. Call in now. It's 6:45.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So, the way we deal with these issues in our country, the kind of attitude that we have, a yet to be identified man has been knocked down by a speeding motorist. That was at Gateway Mall on Mombasa Road.
Yes, that was early, actually about 25 minutes ago.
And that just becomes a statistic, a man. Another yet to be identified person has been knocked off a motorbike on Thika Road by another speeding motorist. And this is all how we deal with it. We basically just look at it as numbers. So somebody has been killed, somebody has died. And Ndu is actually saying that let's start getting more graphic and into detail of these people. Say, so and so has actually been killed, and this person was a father of 5, or this person was a brother to so and so's son, and we start humanizing these stories.
If you look at these incidences, or if you isolate them, you actually don't see the pattern. But there is very direct correlation to this, to the issue of femicide that Nyeri talked about recently, the increase in violence within families, the perpetual indication of danger, death. Like now we have, the numbers have hit 41 in West Pokot. It'll soon be a statistic. Every time it's an emergency, it's an issue for a day or two. Why? We've normalized it. It's normal. So it doesn't shake people, it doesn't bother people.
It happens.
Yes.
It's just, it's one of those things.
Yes.
It's part of life.
Yes.
Until it affects you directly. Don't we see a different kind of attitude when it affects you as an individual?
I'm going to take this further and actually point to the issue of cancer. On this very show, we've spoken about it and talked about it as being something that should actually be declared a national disaster or an epidemic. It became news when we had 3 prominent citizens succumb to cancer. Do you hear of it again?
Nope.
Yes. So again, it is something that it gathers and it arrests our attention for a very brief period, and then it goes. Now here the media is very directly responsible for this, because the media highlights these things, and so people absorb them. Nyeri has said this very often, subliminal messaging. So people absorb it to the point where it's normal. Now we're talking about this gang in Mombasa. We've forgotten that not long ago there was Kaya Bombo.
Yep.
They wreaked havoc. They killed policemen. They did all sorts of crazy things. At the coast, there was Mombasa Sipwani. There were gangs. If you isolate them, it looks like they are not isolated.
It's Pwani, si Kenya.
Yes. There's a Kenya Sipwani.
Mombasa.
Mombasa Sipwani.
Okay, fine. Now, all I'm saying is these things are connected. It represents the national psyche, how we look at things. Now, when politicians say the things they say and do the things they do, they're contributing to this negativity.
How can we vilify this? How can we...
One thing that we do have in abundance is laws. We just never we never action these laws. Laws we have. We have laws against hate speech. We have a constitution that tells us all sorts of wonderful things and things that must be done. If it is the framework within which to function, we already have it. But this is going to be the subject of my discussion this morning. The issue of the power of the office and the power of the individual in authority, and how it determines and changes and shapes lives. Because these very things that we're talking about are the same things that we're not grappling with something that other nations don't grapple with, or other communities. These are human issues, but other people seem to have managed them. How do they do it?
They're not unique to Kenya.
No, they're not.
They're not.
We discussed this actually a couple of weeks back. Remember the way other countries, they kind of drink driving campaigns and road safety campaigns that they do.
Yes.
And if you look at NTSA's mandate is that, so come up with policies that promote and ensure safety on the roads. I think NTSA should actually have a budget that they are able to come up with these behavioral change campaigns. Ensure that people start seeing the way that we're talking about. How can people start seeing that this is not a somebody else's problem? It is something that can actually affect me, and this is how it affects me.
Just look at it, Eric. When you then have, say, for instance, a DPP or a director of criminal investigation who seem to be doing their job, look at our reaction. It's either a witch hunt,
Right.
or why aren't they jailing people? If there's a delayed process, why are the judges a bottleneck? our whole attitude, you just look at our whole attitude. There may be truths to this. There may definitely be witch hunts.
Yep.
The judiciary may very well be a bottleneck. But that isn't entirely the case.
I think, CT, we've taken it back to governance, but if we just go back to our psyche, which I think at this point is what we need to change. I know it's affected by the governance, but there's two things I want to look at. First of all, I want us to look at the stigma. You've worked in HIV, AIDS, and there was a lot of stigma there, a lot of shame.
There still is stigma.
There still is. Now, why is that something that is stigmatized, even by the individual? Will feel shame. But with something like this, we don't have that moral repugnancy where it's somebody actually killing somebody else. Now, if we can understand the psychology and the disparity between those two things and try and not bring them together, of course, I don't advocate for the stigmatization or anything of the sort of HIV, but if we understand that, and I think it boils down to the fact that we're a shame-based society. How can we bring shame to this idea of drink driving? Because only then, we need to police ourselves. The idea of getting governance and systems in place, policing to enforce the laws, traffic laws for drink driving, it's too difficult because there's too many people with cars who are drinking. We don't have enough policemen, we've seen, and they're corruptible, they can be bribed. So this has then to be an individual thing. And the way to go about it, if we're going to change our minds about drink driving, is create a shame aspect to it. How we do that, I don't know. But, sorry.
How long will it last? You see the
Consistency.
The
is key.
shame.
yes.
It's got to be over it. It's got to
see,
be consistent.
it's
How can
like-
we create a shame element? This is what I'm saying about drink driving.
No, I'm adding to it and saying, how do we make it last? Because if you start the process, we start these processes.
And then we stop. I'll give you an example of how NTSA started. NTSA was publishing names of people who have actually been arrested on drink driving on the newspapers on a regular basis. Name, vehicle registration number, ID number, everything is there.
Were people ashamed, or was it sort of a fist bump with
people
their
ashamed.
friends? They
People
were
were
ashamed.
ashamed.
They were
Yeah,
ashamed.
says your name show
They were
up because
ashamed.
you were actually behind the wheel. And
Your boss at
while
work
drunk.
actually sees your name
Yes.
there.
There
So
were
What if you're
changes.
the boss? Does it matter?
your employees see that
Yeah, your employees
you were
who you-
arrested.
Oh, okay.
who you
good
hold
point.
against some kind of standard of responsibility, and then they shouldn't do something like this.
Some
but then you
judges
find that their
appeared
names
on
are in
those
the
lists.
They
papers.
would
Remember?
even film you.
Yeah.
And we had some serious entertainment.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
I do agree that probably the one of the it's possible to come up with these campaigns, and I think one of the greatest ways that you can have this is campaigns, and we've seen them work in other countries, whereby these campaigns did not stop after 3 months. You know, it's constant. Like, for example, if you go to the city of Los Angeles, around the city, you have these campaigns where it's unfortunately it's the body of a young girl. She's died because somebody was behind the wheel drunk, and you have what happened. She would have been X at the end of 10 years. She would have been able to achieve this. This is what her mother says of her. But then you have this constantly, and it's around the clock. Unfortunately, then are we then able to handle this consistency? I remember when the gender-based violence campaigns really took center stage in this country, and we would have the black spots in Nairobi, for example, and we would have, you know, the billboard where that this is a black spot. As a woman, don't be caught here past this hour. But then after 3 months, it disappeared, and those black spots became even darker spots because they still became rape joints for a lot of the perpetrators.
Yeah.
You know, so I think something that would be consistent is what would be absolutely necessary to get rid of something like this. If we're going to say one way to deter is to have people imbibe that element of shame and to say, oh my goodness, I wouldn't want to do this. I wouldn't want to be the cause, for example, of this young girl not having reached her future, not having attained what she would have wanted to attain in life because I was behind the wheel and I cut her life short, or, you know, snuffed out her life per se. But they would have to be constant reminders of something like that on the roads when you're driving in a matatu, whatever, in a bus across the country. Those would have to be necessary if we're saying that one of the ways to get rid of this was to have people, you know, have that element of shame. It would have to be in your face
has to be
all the time
constant.
for eternity. It would have to be constant.
We have an authority.
and
We have a
consistent.
body that is actually there in law, and it's an authority. This body gets a budget. So it's possible to actually create a campaign and have consistency because we have a mechanism for it. It's just having, like I think City is going to be raising later in the day, it's having proper leadership that actually focuses on, this is my mandate here. My mandate is to ensure that there's safety on our roads. This is my job. And looking at how do I go about this?
You know, one person will keep being mentioned in this particular show. John Michuki. Because you saw it.
Yes.
Everything that it had been accepted that impunity was part and parcel of the culture of the matatu business. He demystified that whole thing.
He finished it.
Completely. It had been accepted that Mungiki were part and parcel of a social fabric. He dismantled it completely. Yes.
And we no longer have Mungiki.
Completely.
It's about consistency, like CT is saying, Jerry. I mean, so how do we get to that point of shame? Yes, having the constant communication. And I think I like that example of Vivian saying, not just put vehicles on the roads, but also just tell us this is so and so died, or so and so is actually on a wheelchair, so and so is a paraplegic now because this is what happened to them, and this was caused by driver X.
Right.
And driver X is now
Go
behind
to the
bars.
details. This was a student in University of Nairobi. She was X years old. She would have been a doctor. Her parents are such and such. And I think once you do that, because once you humanize it and you give people that, then would bring an element of shame to say, oh, because of my direct involvement, I stopped this from happening. And I could potentially do the same to somebody else if I got behind the wheel while drunk. And I think that is one way that you would actually be able to, bring in the element of shame. If we're saying that it is the shame, then that would stop people from doing this.
Have you noticed, listeners, my voice seems to be taking a little walk, but I'm sure it'll return at some point.
It'll come back somewhere.
If you look at the way people cover their faces, if you look at the way they bow their heads,
Yes.
Now, there are some who stare into the face, but the vast majority, you can see they are embarrassed. They don't want the public to know who they are.
Yeah.
So Nyeri is right. That shame is a tool that can be used. Look at the situation we're talking about in Mombasa. What I found alarming, the policemen confronted the group and they walked towards them. That everything that I have read from the way they chop people down, those children were under drugs.
Right.
They were under the influence
They're
of drugs.
completely under the influence.
Yes. Someone sees the police and walks towards them.
And then
It seems that person is zonked.
Right.
they're not themselves.
No.
It happens a lot.
No.
City, have some water and warm up your throat a bit as we
Yeah.
It's going. Let's wait for it to come back. Take a moment. Let's wait for it to come back. So yes, if we actually look at it from that point of we need to change our behavior because the laws are there, they're in place. I think the behavior and bringing that whole shame into the public and society will also push for action down the road. When somebody's taken to court, the courts will actually treat this as well. This is a case of public interest. And the public, everybody's eyes are on this particular case. So the prosecutors, the magistrate will be knowing that this case, I can't just deal with it, chini ya maji. I have actually to take action, and the action, everybody's waiting to see what action I take.
I think it's one of the looking at ways that would make sense. It seems, as we've had this discussion, that it is something that if it was done and really taken seriously with the agencies or the bodies that have been mandated to deal with something, because like you said, if anything we have in abundance, we have laws. We have laws. We have agencies who've been set up to do things like this, and or to at least make such things happen when it comes to making sure that we have the numbers down. Unfortunately, we're getting to the time of the year when the numbers are likely to increase, and so obviously a campaign now doesn't really make sense because
for now we need alcohol blow back on the roads.
For now, for the festive period, absolutely
we definitely do need that on the road, and we need to have them more widespread across the city and across the country because that's what we are saying. So now, because of some small public outcry, they have been removed. Why would you remove? If we've been complaining about police officers and harassment for so long, we've never seen police officers removed from policing the country. Why would you remove this? Because people are complaining it's being used for extortion. Catch the cops who are actually demanding bribes. Don't say that you're going to remove this. This is the situation with Kenya's biggest conversation. The conversation happens on Facebook. We are live streaming Spice FM KE. It's also happening on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is Spice FM KE and the hashtag is The Situation Room. We're also live streaming on YouTube, Spice FM KE, and also on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. Good morning. It is 7 o'clock.
spice up your life.
Okay, folks, we're asking you to really take it easy this morning because the roads are wet, and I know you must be in a hurry trying to get to work, but we have yet another accident on Mombasa Road opposite Simba Cement as a pickup has landed in the tunnel. Please drive carefully as you approach that area because now we have a buildup of traffic right there. The roads are slippery, so please be careful. Looking down past the city, coming out of Langata Road and also Ngong Road, not so bad. Everybody's moving at a slower pace because, yes, like we said, it's raining and the roads are wet. We're still waiting for emergency services on Thika Road to remove the body off the road at that point where it happened this morning with the motorbike rider. But we have traffic that's built up all the way past the Thika Road Mall now this morning. So let's see what happens as you try to get into the city centre. Coming out of Westlands is not so bad and trying to access the city. But again, it is raining and everybody is taking it a bit slow, which you should do. And let's see what happens in a short while as concerns that. But remember, be careful so that you do arrive alive. 0719012600 is the number to call. Send us a tweet to let us know what's going on in your neck of the woods.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Nyeri Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's 2 minutes after 7 o'clock. Good morning and how are you doing? This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We are broadcasting on 94.4 in Nairobi. We're in Mombasa on 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, Malindi, 97.7. We live stream every morning on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on YouTube, Spice FM KE, and also on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. We're also having this conversation on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is SpiceFMKE and the hashtag is The Situation Room. So this morning we're discussing road safety and especially drink driving on our roads. So recently alcohol were removed from the streets of Nairobi, the roads of Nairobi rather, because of what police say was an outcry from the public because of alleged increased incidences of harassment and bribery on the roads. Well, there are other stories that go around on why exactly this was removed from Nairobi, but we don't know, so let's not go there. But also, we know a couple of years back, President Uhuru Kenyatta himself directed NTSA off the roads, who are also conducting those sting operations as well with the police officers and in some instances by themselves. What is it that we should do to ensure that there is safety of all road users? From drunk drivers.
What should we do, or how should we get our fellow citizens to value lives more, starting with their own? Because if someone shows a complete disregard for other people's lives, it tells you how they value their own life and how it's just an extension of a devaluation of self, if I may call it that. So how do we turn this around? How do we get... The other week we were talking about patriotism. We're talking about... All these things we keep talking about. It points to something fairly serious. The Kenyan, as we know this particular individual, doesn't paint a very good picture of themselves. No. This is a person who seems ready to accept negative things more than positive. This is a person who is willing to accept wrong and replace it with right at the slightest Nyeri has called them fickle, and I have argued against it on many, many occasions. But it appears that this is one of those mornings where I'm going to be agreeing with her on very many issues. But I would add a twist to it. What is it that forces people or coerces them to get to the point where they are compliant to even things that endanger their own lives? What is it that happens to people to the point where they almost have a total disregard for their own safety and their own welfare? Because everything we're discussing here points to, it's like people who have turned on and they're on self-destruct mode.
Yeah.
And it seems that we have quite a number who are in that mode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Self-destruct. John Stream says it's not possible because it's all about self-discipline and humility, the two that lack in today's population. So only accidents will teach people that this is a serious lesson.
Really? But we've had so
In
many.
this country, it doesn't.
We've had so many accidents.
Changan 1, that place in the Rift Valley after Salga.
Sachang one.
That one. I have the same problem with that particular place. I read it, I internalize it, just like Nyeri has a problem with Kieleweke. That is my Kieleweke. Shangan who again?
Sachang one.
Yes, see, keep telling you. Now, how many times did a similar accident repeat itself in that spot?
Right. Same thing.
Same
Tanker.
Same.
Fuel burst.
Same.
People still don't care.
Same. Believe me, if an accident occurred there again, I'm certain something similar would happen. Yes.
Kiprops Msani says we advise people not to drive when they're drunk, and also alcohol to identify drunk drivers, because when we advise our drivers to do so, we are mindful of our fellow citizens. This is in Cheplambus, Baringo.
Are we though aware of our fellow citizens? That's a question though.
How do
Because
we
are we then aware?
advise
Even look
someone
at
not to
look at the
drink
way we drive on the roads, even without the influence of alcohol. Just that alone. Aware of the person next to you, aware of the person who is driving next to you. Are we even aware of that when it comes to being aware of our fellow citizen? Then again, yes, I think the value for life is actually quite low. The value for life is quite low when then people are thinking about staying alive.
Do you remember there was a time we had a doctor calling in on this particular show, and we were talking about the very same thing, and he gave an example of a patient he once had who had passed away. And the father said he had to leave. And he asked, but your child has just died. And he said, if I do not go to work, I will likely not be able to
bury this boy. Yeah.
Yes. Now, when people are constantly faced with dire situation, they get conditioned. And that's what's happened. They get conditioned. They are on just basic self-preservation mode. What keeps you going from step to step to step to step?
So you can tie this in with sort of economic hardship. Is that what you're saying?
I am. That is precisely what.
But do you have countries whereby, if we try and make comparisons, countries whereby there's no economic hardship, but you still have high rates of drink driving? So maybe it's a culture. Or the other way around, where there is economic hardship, it's an underdeveloped country, but they don't have high rates of drink driving.
It's possible, but what I do know is that when you kill the sense of community, all these things that we speak of become rampant and common. A sense of community is in itself a check and balance.
Yes.
Because there's an element of accountability.
Right.
So when you remove that, then people will just go their merry way and do whatever it is they see fit. In fact, the greatest form of deterrent is that accountability that you find within society, you find within community. You feel I might let down someone, this may not be accepted. That keeps you from doing things.
Exactly.
And in an African setting, that's why it's very difficult to come across what in the West we refer to as sociopaths. It's difficult.
Yeah, somebody kept you in check.
You're kept in check.
Yes, absolutely.
But when you have the isolationist idea and individualism that you find in the West, it's very easy for those traits to flare up.
And that's what's happening to our society.
Yes. If you think about it, ask yourself, for the longest possible time, rural areas were not known for high crime rates.
Yes.
No.
They never were, because the sense of community has always existed in the rural areas. People know each other. And even if you're a thief, people know who the thief is.
They know who the thief is. Even things like kidnapping of children, because if you saw a child walking off at some point, somebody would say, excuse me.
And this is so-and-so's child.
This is so-and-so's child. Where are you going? Or where is it that you're coming from?
But even then, in the rural areas, even if you drive there, doesn't it shock you? Small children just seem to be walking all over the place.
All over the
Nowadays,
place. Yeah.
yes.
There is no sense of danger,
Of
that
danger.
somebody
They are
may.
safe.
It doesn't happen because that safety is taken for granted. Here, your child walks out for 5 minutes, you
You're
almost
having
go into
an
a panic.
aneurysm, right?
Yes.
It's true. A lot then needs to change in terms of how we think about things. And I think that we need, again, here's another opportunity for then us to be extremely deliberate about how we do things. And if we're saying that a change needs to happen, and the change needs to happen in the psyche of people to reduce these deaths that we're seeing, or maybe bring them to the point of zero, then the shame element needs to be introduced and kept in our eyes, or at least kept in our foresight, in order for us to change.
For shame to work, there must be an opposite reward, which is positive as well. Rewards work that way. If it's just negative, people will also get used to it.
Right, and they say, yeah, okay,
And,
it's
and
shameful.
after a
so
while,
big.
it'll likely have no effect.
Becomes
on them.
nothing.
Yes.
It's 11 minutes past 7 o'clock. This is a situation. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Live streaming on Facebook, Spice FM KE, or also on YouTube, Spice FM KE, and on our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have Nduoko, Jerry Thorne, and CT Muga. Now, we know that the BBI report is going to be handed over to the president and the opposition leader Raila Odinga tomorrow at State House. And then thereafter, we also understand that the president and the former prime minister will be hosting people from across the country at Bomas of Kenya, where they'll present the report to the public. So this is what's going to be known, that, this is what the team has worked on. This is what the team has actually prepared. This is the work that they went and took more than a year to come up with, having gone around the country, having taken into account what they were told to do. And we know the genesis of BBI was the handshake on March 8th last year between the president and Mr. Odinga. And we also know that what they were discussing is, look, after the 2017 general election, there was still a lot of tension around the country. Let's look at this and other issues on why we constantly have tension around the country during and after elections. And of course, we've also heard from everybody who's speaking around about it in the country is the likelihood is that we're going to seek to have a more inclusive system of government, and maybe probably a more inclusive system of voting, where the president has said it in Sagana the other day, where every vote counts. Not one vote would count for 10 bob, but another one counts for 1 bob. Every vote would count. So the BBI report comes out tomorrow. We also know, however, that there have been people who've been going around the country and saying, no, if this BBI does not take care of this and the other, then we're going to reject it. We're going to oppose it. Is this a scheme by some people to ensure that they succeed themselves in government? This is actually bringing a lot of political sideshows to a process that should not have those political sideshows. But I want to tell you this morning that this is not new. If we remember the journey to the current constitution that we have, 2010, this journey took more than a decade, from the early 90s when the issue of constitution review was mooted. In 1990, a task force by KANU, headed by the then Vice President George Saitoti, sat down and took in some views. There was a repeal of Section 2A that allowed multipartism and the multi-party democracy that then ensued. And then, of course, we got to 1997 when there was the formation of the CKRC. And the opposition parties felt, no, this commission is not inclusive of us. And opposition and religious leaders and civil society formed their own parallel system of constitution review, and this was called the Ufungamano Initiative, which was bringing together the civil society, the religious leaders, the opposition political parties, and others, and they went around the country. They also collected views, while at the same time, Yashpal Gai has been appointed with these commissioners to also go around the country collecting views. If you think about what Yashpal Gai said, he said, I don't want to be sworn in to this when there's another parallel body going on. So first, I'd like to seek a consensus where we can work jointly with the Fungamano Initiative. They did that, They came together. Members of the Fungamano Initiative joined the Yashpal Gai Commission, and they worked together to deliver a new constitution. Bomas 1, Bomas 2. It was widespread. It was all-inclusive. The whole idea of having BBI is to ensure that we have a country that is more inclusive, takes in views of everybody. This morning, I want to say, when the BBI report is presented to the two principals tomorrow, and even present to the country on Wednesday, we should then have another Bomas conference to actually discuss the BBI. Don't just do it in public rallies. We should have a Bomas conference that brings in people from across the country to Bomas of Kenya to discuss these issues that have been put together in this report.
You don't think we should start with the setting up a commission to decide whether it is
Whether it's right or wrong.
Whether we should have a Bomas
or whether we should go
conference.
to KICC or maybe go to some stadium. I mean, these are...
Actually, I am not discounting that fact. Look, my whole point this morning is we need to have it felt like it's completely inclusive.
Let
So
me
first
ask
of all,
you,
how
Eric,
they... Yes,
when
ask
you
me,
have
Jerry.
this conference, what would the purpose be of this conference? So that different groups are represented, I'm guessing, and everybody's voice is heard?
Yes.
Okay, you are aware that the BBI is actually, if you look at the schema behind it and the framework through which it came about, it's actually bottom up in terms of they've spoken to people from the ground, from different communities, from different walks of life, church-based organizations, influences in different communities, and they're the ones who are informing the BBI.
Who formed the BBI team?
Who formed the BBI team? It was
Yes.
commissioned, of course, by the president himself.
Yes.
Now, forget the team,
So
but
it is
what
top
the
down.
team...
I am not forgetting the team because it's
What
critical.
is top down?
It is critical. The team that is...
What is top down?
The wazee that are in BBI.
The information in the BBI?
Nope.
The information in the report?
The selection of the team, the BBI team, was actually done by two people.
Because you,
Right?
you need
It was done
leadership.
by two people.
Okay.
It's the same issue that arose when President Moi and Kanu formed the initial CKRC of 17 commissioners.
Okay.
The reason why we went to have the Ufungamano initiative is because the other people felt we are not even included in the formation of this particular commission. All right? And then they went around the country in some particular centers of the country. They didn't go into every village, into every corner of the country. They collected views, yes, from opinion leaders. And of course, they didn't have
From
much time.
everybody, literally.
From opinion leaders, not everybody. They didn't have public barazas.
They did.
Oh
yes.
They had
forums
they
where
had-
the public actually came in
they
to talk
had
to them.
yes,
Hey, come
yes,
on.
city. They had forums, but where were those forums being held?
They held in halls, public halls, and
There
so
you
forth.
go.
Yes.
Public halls. If you go to a part like, call it Illicit in Kajiado County, do they know anyone who actually held this forum? They don't. Because in Kajiado, how many places was it held in Kajiado County? You'll count it.
No, Eric.
To be
Compare
honest-
this to the other process.
Which one?
The other process of the CKRC and the Ufungamano initiative. They cascaded it down, further down to the people.
How?
Right?
How down? Explain this down to me.
It went to actually local centers.
So did this. Where do you think they were gathering information from?
Not on local
With
centers.
BBI.
I've just told you. If you went to Loitoktok and asked them whether they actually BBI team went there, they'll tell you.
You've been and they've told you?
Yeah, they did not.
Sorry, no. You've been to Loktok
Loitoktok.
there. You've been there and they've told you?
Look at the BBI. They were advertising where they were going to be, Jerry. This is public information.
People can travel. People can be paid to travel
But
to,
Eric has
to
answered his
centers.
own
They can't
question
go to
because
every single ward.
You see, they advertised and they told people,
This is where we're going to
yes,
be.
we're coming to your
Absolutely.
region,
Why
and this is where
why
we're
do you
going to
think
be.
they're doing
On
that?
this-
So that
Yes.
people can go.
Yes, on this one day.
So that
Now, the people who are actually coming to present, have we had a mechanism of appointing or even electing or selecting people who are going to represent our views in that one forum? The other process had that. Now, I was coming to answer the question of why we need a Bomas 3. The reason we need a Bomas 3 is to have now the voices that were not picked out during that initial process. Let's say, yes, let's accept that the initial process happened. And they've worked hard. They've produced a report. They've taken the report to the President and the Prime Minister. And the President and Prime Minister now have the report. Now we are going to discuss issues of changing of our governance system. Then let's now bring in people whose voices were not heard. Let's elect a representative. Let me give you like the composition of the former Bomas conference, okay? It had all the MPs of the National Assembly, 223. It had 210 district representatives elected by county councils. Okay. It had 29 commissioners, of course. Those commissioners had to be members of it. It had 41 people representing political parties, one person per political party. It had 126 other representatives from around the country. You see, it was more inclusive, and that's why it was called the National Constitution Conference at Bomas of Kenya.
Now,
The
these are
report
the
has been
most
done by
corruptible people in the
CKRC.
country, these politicians.
Not just
you speak
politicians.
to. No, you speak
Not
of
just
when you talk of
politicians.
MPs and
So MPs are corruptible.
representatives. I think more corruptible than the people that the
The
BBI
200
would have spoken to on the ground. These are people whose views can easily be swayed with brown envelopes. We've seen that happening in Parliament. What I'm coming to, I mean, it doesn't take a conference, it doesn't even take a BBI report to understand that we need more inclusivity. We've seen it ourselves. Every election cycle, there has been tensions which have led to not just the divisions, but you've seen economically, GDP goes down, investor confidence, the sort of hatred between ourselves. We're at the brink of civil war in 2007. We don't even need a BBI report. While we're being taken through all this sort of hullabaloo and pandemonium, I can understand it's important that the leadership feel that everybody was part and parcel of this, but they could have easily brought in McKinsey or a consultancy firm who would have done this and told us exactly what we need and would have had a brilliant, well-written report.
Right.
Now, of course,
And after
politically, this is also a tool, and we've gone about it this way. Of course, I support the BBI for a number of reasons, because I believe in its content. Just having seen the 9 points that were to be explored, I agree with a lot of those things. Of course, because I'm a great supporter of the president himself, that is my party. So I also support any initiatives
You went to
from
ODM
there.
the other day, so are you?
So
you're back.
ODM came to us, my
Okay.
friend. So we're together.
Are
The,
you-
the handshake happened.
Are you in Jubilee or in ODM?
I'm sitting on the handshake.
Okay.
Now, so I support it, but I don't think we needed to go through all this to understand that we needed to make a few changes in Kenya, and indeed through our constitution, through the legal instrument that is our constitution. We needed a referendum because we needed amendments. This system simply was not working for us.
What is a referendum, Jerry?
What is a referendum? It's when you put a question to the public on a matter of governance in the constitution for them to answer, and you
There
go
you
to
go.
a poll.
So it's public participation. And before you go to a referendum, you need to have some civic education. You need to build consensus. So what avenue are you going to use to build consensus once you have this report out? That's my question to you.
Well, usually it's campaigns.
Uh-huh.
You go into campaign mode, which to me is not civic education. Sadly,
It is
here things
campaigning.
get so politicized, and you end up with things, Brexits, where people with very little information are voting on euphoria, and then when they realize what the repercussions are, they don't want to have voted that way, and it's too late. So we have to be careful not to
So during-
politicize this.
good.
Which
So
for
during
me,
campaigns, people-
I can't
people
see
don't
who
even
would
read
be
this thing.
against inclusivity. How can you go against that?
It is
Do you understand?
It
As
is
a
the
nation,
method of inclusivity.
who would be
You
against
know,
nationhood?
But we're already talking about who would be for or against something.
There you
that
go.
We
we've
haven't
not
even seen.
We haven't seen. We don't know what the report is. And I believe that this report is going to bring out then what it is that people around the country have said. If we said there was public participation, taking the 9 points and then having this committee that went around the country and then included people and said, we are coming to your region on such and such a day, come and hear what it is that we're trying to put forth in this country. So then this report essentially is going to put together all of that, Nespa, put together all of that and bring it to the people and say, look, based on what you have told us, this, and now combined with our idea, this is then what we are presenting. I think what Eric is saying now, at that point, to then accept this initiative, it should then go back to the people and say, this is what we have come up with. This is what the people of Kenya have said. Is it something that you see you would like to have incorporated into the way governance is carried out in this country? Is that what you're saying, Eric? And then
What I'm saying
there,
is-
and then from there we can go to referendum.
Yes. Well, basically, what I'm saying is, you've gone around the country, you've collected views from the people, you've presented a report. Take that report back to the people. And one good way of taking the report back to the people is
Chew
by
your
bringing...
cud, basically, is what
Yes.
you're saying. Chew it again and then see if we can swallow it
No,
one more
no,
time,
no,
then
no.
bring
You
it
have
up.
You have to present. You have to present the report to the
Don't know
people.
about that
The people
analogy.
told you, and you've come up with a report, right? So you basically the outcome, the output of the BBI team is the report. This is what you told us. How do we vet that this is exactly what we told you?
Okay.
You're going
And
to
once we
present it.
vetted that, how do we then vet that? Do you know? I mean,
What do you mean?
It's never ending. It's a rabbit hole if you want to
No,
go
it
down and
ends.
say we
It
need to make
ends,
sure.
Jerry.
No,
From
it
that
doesn't.
point,
Sorry.
from
Okay,
that-
sorry. What process are you suggesting after this BBI? Because we could further fine tune it to
Oh,
make sure
okay.
that
So
this time
welcome.
for real,
Welcome,
we
Jerry.
could keep going.
Let me repeat. So welcome. Okay, are we together? So now the BBI team has gone around the country. N'est-ce pas? They have
Who is
collected.
Nespa?
Sorry.
Jerry mentioned him. Now, Eric, you're mentioning him.
N'est-ce
I
pas?
mentioned him. It's in French, isn't it? Sorry.
Oh,
It's
Oui.
just
isn't it?
Oui,
Cece,
say
stop
oui.
it.
Say we. So, once the report is out, take it back to the people. Say, this is what you've presented to us. So, bring in representatives from around the country, across the country, and sit them in one place and let them discuss it. And they say, this is what we have. And for us to now fine-tune it and say, yes, we said this, and how you've put it together, it makes a lot of sense to us, or amend this and the other. Don't just take it to the National Assembly, which has 300 and something members of parliament. Take it to the people. And then the people will actually fine-tune that draft
Which
and
people?
come up with a
Which
question.
people? How are we going to take it to the
What
people? Through
mechanism are you going to
representatives?
use?
Yes,
Through
through
representatives.
representatives.
MPs are not the representatives.
They are part of the representatives.
Okay, so you want
Include-
MCAs?
Widen it.
But I thought these are the same people who commented on this BBI.
Not necessarily.
Went
Who?
round.
The people.
Anyway, who says that won't
No,
be done in the
wait,
first
wait.
instance?
The other day we had the
Who-
women's rep
who-
from Muranga
Yep.
who told us that her caucus gave the
Presented
suggestions
views.
to the BBI. Yes. All right. Now, the thing I liked about this particular representative, her first attempt at the women's rep position, what is not known to many people, she actually got more votes than the governor
No, she was right. Yeah.
and the senator. So, if you're talking about representation,
She had wide representation.
this is what I'm saying now. If she contributed and others like her contributed, this is where I'm taking my argument. Were the people not represented?
So the hue and cry comes.
So
that-
what's your process? So after beyond this, beyond the BBI report going, how before it comes to the to ask for a referendum, where should it go?
Once it is published, if I had to go by the public pronouncements as the politicians behind it have said, they will then make it public. Print it, make it public, it'll be in the papers, it'll be made public, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, if I were supporting it or if I was anti it, that is now the opportunity I have, since it's out in the public domain, to either further my agenda in promoting it or in disregarding it.
I think a lot of the
Yes.
jitteriness.
So
that-
essentially, 2022 will have come early.
Right. I think a lot of the jitters comes from that. Okay, by the time the report is out, even if I am to lend my participation, it might be then too late.
But what participation? Your participation was being presented to you. That's
No.
what you've been given. That's
No.
what the
Nope.
report is.
Nope.
So that's what this
Nope.
is the report
Nope.
after the participation has happened. Here it is.
Eric
The
has
concept
dissented.
of concept of participation is more widespread than that.
How
So now
come?
you're saying this
Alright.
participation should have taken before the report.
You guys are not.
He's saying there's a before and after.
All right, there's
Yes.
an before and after
Yes.
aspect of public participation.
Yes.
So after this report comes,
Let's
then
have another public participation. Now, instead of saying
And come out with a more condensed report or a refined report.
a more refined report,
And then why stop there? Why not have yet another one to actually look at
if you
that
have,
one?
If you have a
no,
refined,
you
if
can,
you have a
this is what I'm
refined
saying,
product,
you can keep
if you have a
going.
refined product, what more do you want?
Who says
Refine
this
it
isn't
further.
refined?
Right?
Who says this isn't refined? And what's the definition of refined? Maybe some people will feel actually we could do with even more participation. So let's have yet another conference.
That is
or actually
fine.
now we need to expose
Actually,
it so that
actually, it's fine.
and we
why
keep
are you
going
stopping
like
it there?
that.
Yes. Why not?
No,
look,
because
look,
things have to be
Jerry.
normative so that
Look,
we can actually get
you
what
know,
we
you-
want
you know, you
for
know,
Kenya. We can't keep going
you know,
because
you know,
people
you
politically
guys-
feel hard done by this
You
thing.
guys are just like those people who are campaigning for or against a product that hasn't actually been seen. That's exactly what you guys are doing right now. So
No,
listen,
that is exactly what
This is your topic,
This is
Eric.
exactly what you say.
And you seem to have a lot more to say about it than us. You've come up with it today.
That's exactly
we
what
haven't
you're
seen
saying.
this thing, and you're saying, why did we do it like this? We haven't even seen. I mean, it might
I
have
have
great
not
things.
questioned why we did it like
know the
that. You see, that's the
principle.
thing. Now, Jerry is actually sitting there thinking that Eric, for whatever Eric is saying, he's opposing BBI. So therefore, I'm going to oppose anything that's
Eric, we all know
No.
that you're Ruto's guy. In here.
and whose guy are you, Jerry?
me, I'm somebody's chick, first of all.
Okay.
So for the record, I am not Tanga Tanga. I am not Kieleweke. I refused, and I told you from the very beginning, I refuse to be boxed in your box. You sit in that box by yourself. I am not in it. I am a Kenyan voter. As a Kenyan voter and somebody who has a lot of say in this constitution, this is my contribution to it. So this is
Would
what I am
this have
saying.
been the same sentiment for any kind of whatever initiative it was? Punguza Mzigo, the other one,
Ugatuzi.
Ugatuzi.
Yes.
Initiative.
Initiative. The same process then should have been carried out if it was allowed to see the light of day, perhaps with Punguza Mzigo.
By the way, public participation by its very nature is actually really very robust. What has gone on before this BBI came into being was public participation. What Eric is suggesting is also public participation.
2.0.
Yes. What we're debating here is at what point does public participation end?
Stop.
And where does it start?
When
does
is it
stop?
enough?
And when is it enough?
Enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because if it's public participation, you can't argue with the concept. But as now the usefulness, that little detail.
Because once you give people an opportunity to speak about something, oh my goodness, they would never stop.
They do stop sometimes.
They will.
When out of saliva.
They will.
Perhaps.
They'll actually do stop. So in the case of Boma's conference, it stopped. There was a clear. This is
When
the
they said
beginning.
we've had enough, we put it together. This
a-
is what we are presenting.
Yes, there is a clear. It's a beginning. So we have come together. This is a report, and then from the report we come up with a draft constitution, and from the draft constitution you go to a referendum. It was very clear. It's the same thing that I'm saying. So this point we have the report. This report is not a draft anything. So for us to make it a draft something, let's actually come back and interrogate it. Have a conference. It's 29 minutes to 8 o'clock. Let's take a look at the roads.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning.
The road is moving along slowly. My goodness, I don't know what's going on. We have the third accident on Thika Road this morning. Yet another individual has been knocked down. It's a combination of many things. The rain, just recklessness, and I guess hangovers from the weekend. And so we have now 4 accidents having taken place around the city between the hours of 6:22 and 7:32, unfortunately. The services are on the road right now trying to clear that up. And we have traffic from Garden City Mall is stretching all the way past the Pangani underpass. All right, Latema Road, we have some issues there as well. Roundabout in the middle of the city, trying to give us some headache when it comes to traffic. Other than that, coming off Wayaki Way, Langata Road and Gong Road is not so bad this morning. But please remember, it is wet, so take it easy. We'll take more information that we can from you. Send us a tweet or give us a call on 0719012 It's a wet morning, guys, and we already have too many accidents already. Don't be another number.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Sunright 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
It's 27 minutes to 8 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have C.T. Muga, we have Nyeri Thorne, and Nduoko. So the BBI report is due to be handed over to the President and the former Prime Minister tomorrow at State House. And then the two leaders of the President has instructed the county commissioners to invite a number of representatives from across the country to Bomas of Kenya on Wednesday, where the report will be presented to them, and then it will be presented to the country, and beyond that it goes. So what I'm doing is I am actually accepting the fact that we have a BBI report that's going to be coming out tomorrow. I'm also accepting the fact that among the changes that we are likely, I don't know, just like the President hasn't seen it, but among the changes that we know from the public discourse
The
on this.
President has told us he hasn't seen
Yes, he has said he hasn't seen it. Among the things that we expect is we are likely to have some proposals on the change of our governance system, a change of our voting system. We know that our current constitution says if you want to amend this constitution, especially on some areas like that, governance, it needs to go to a referendum. That means everybody around the country must vote yes or no to this. Now, of course, the President and the Prime Minister have also told us, guys, wait for the report, read the report, let's look at it from an objective point of view. I'm proposing, the former Prime Minister, let's look at it from an objective point of view. Now, my proposal is for us to be able now to look at it in that objective point of view. Instead of going around the country, taking another 6 months, going around the country and you're educating people about it, let's have some representation from across the country coming together, just like we had in 2003 at Bomas of Kenya. And let people meet at Bomas of Kenya, let the report be presented, let it be discussed and debated at Bomas of Kenya, and then beyond that, now it goes into whatever system it goes to. Either it goes into Parliament as a bill,
probably.
and it goes to Parliament as a bill, or the people who are in that Bomas of Kenya actually sign, and they give their signatures, and you have more than 1 million signatures that go to IEBC, and they are verified, and it goes across the country as
Can I ask
one
a
the other
question,
route.
Eric?
Yes, ask.
When we had the boomers, did we have the county system in place?
No, we didn't. We had the provincial
Okay,
system
now,
in place.
What if we cascaded this very thing through the county system and gave the mandate to the governors and the political establishment within the counties to disseminate this information to their people? Would it not also work?
What is disseminating information to the people?
These discussions that you're talking about, having them at boomers,
So we have county forums.
why don't you have county forums instead?
But even before it actually goes to a referendum, if this is a parliamentary initiative, which is one of the methods through which to amend the constitution, Parliament will have to actually publish the bill and facilitate for public participation. So there's other opportunities to have these discussions.
True.
What we don't want to do is stagnate. Remember, we have elections coming up in 2022.
Yes.
One of the things that we're looking to fix or to remedy with any amendments that we make to this constitution, or from the report of the BBI, which includes inclusivity, is to take away the tensions that we have in elections, to take away the division and to unite the country. So if we're going to keep going and wasting time with extra public participation and extra reviews, these guys already have, your members of your parliament are your representatives. So there's already representatives who are going to thrash this thing out before they put it into the form of a bill. It's then going to be debated. It then has to be communicated to the public, published to the public, and they then have to facilitate for public participation. This is as per the constitution. So there's enough opportunities and platforms for the public to get involved. But I keep saying we don't need to scrutinize our elections too much to realize that there's a problem here. We've all lived it. There's no Kenyan you can speak to that doesn't get tense towards elections. There's no one who doesn't know lives have been lost. There's no one who doesn't want peaceful elections. There's no one whose businesses aren't affected. There's no one whereby tensions don't rise.
A national dialogue, Nyeri, is not to discuss whether or not we actually have problems at the end of the election. A national dialogue is to look at the proposed solution to this. It's everybody has accepted, and we have gone through a process of coming up with a solution, and now let's look at
The only
proposed
solution is a parliamentary system. We're a multi-ethnic democracy. Look around the world.
Okay.
This is how it works.
That is the only
if we're
solution.
going to do democracy.
The only solution, according to Nyeri, is a parliamentary system. Okay? Maybe the only
look at South Africa and what system they have. Look at countries. South Africa is multiracial.
And I am sure you had those ideas, and maybe you even took them to the BBI. So now, among you and other people have also presented those ideas. Let's assume that it actually comes out in the BBI report. Let's go parliamentary. Okay? The key thing about BBI is inclusivity. That everybody feels included. And this is why you have an opportunity to have a national dialogue.
I think if we extend this dialogue, we give it more of an opportunity to be politicized, which we don't want to do with something like this. It needs to be sorted out before 2022.
It is politicized.
What you don't want is create a larger surface area for DP to come in, so and so to come in and say this for political gain.
Well, I think we already have that aspect of politics that's already playing out when it comes to this initiative. We already have the hue and cry from very many political quarters where people are saying, already we have politicians who are saying reject it, and you have their followers who are already listening to them. So whatever the outcome is, that is already the creed that they have. The creed is reject it because my political leader has said such, without actually having the merits or the demerits taken into consideration.
They don't know it. And
CT, there's some people who don't. There's some people who CT. There's some people who don't know it, don't care to know it, but by virtue of the fact that their own political leader has leaned in one way or another, they've already rejected or accepted.
Political utterances must not be taken at face value.
But there are individuals who take them just like that.
The public
we
tends
know
to,
that. Yes.
But look, if you are a politician, how do you ensure that you're constantly in the limelight?
No, definitely by rejecting.
What do you do?
And then remember one thing, guys. This will be voted on.
Yes,
you can actually disagree with it altogether. Do you understand what I mean?
You will be given the ultimate participation.
Absolutely. you'll say, actually, no, I don't want this.
Or yes, I want it.
But the thing is,
So?
unfortunately, but the thing.
So why do
the
we need
dan-
all these in-between interim steps that delay the process? We're coming up to 2022 that allow for further politicization of the BBI. Why do we need all that?
But wouldn't it be
Because
great
they
if people
speak
voted
for
on?
platforms.
Wouldn't it be great if people voted on something that they understood?
And they know.
That
You
they
have an
knew.
opportunity. What a national.
Who
what
says they
a
won't
national-
understand it?
I mean, we've just said that it's been politicized. There's some people
Yes.
who are not going to read it because their political leaders have said one thing or
Absolutely,
another.
that
Yes.
exists.
Yes.
And the more we decide we're going to discuss this with what Eric is suggesting, that we have further conferences and platforms whereby people can contribute even more, the more scope for politicization that we give this document, that we give this report.
That argument was actually
We
made.
just-
That argument that you're making today was made in the 90s.
Well, I mean, arguments,
the way-
they last over time. Socrates made arguments
Yes.
thousands of
That
years ago.
argument was
They
countered.
don't expire.
That argument was countered very nicely because that's when the term Wanjiku was coined. Because the former president said, you know what, Wanjiku already knows what Wanjiku wants, right? And I'm going to move this process forward. Let's have a commission, let them go around the country, let them collect views, let's come back together and let's vote on it. And the people said, no, we need to have more inclusion. Inclusivity is key, and we need to have a consensus and dialogue. And that's why the process was actually now brought down into let's have
So
one
people want
constitution process.
inclusion.
Yes.
Inclusivity is very important.
Well, that's what the BBI is about,
What the
ironically. I mean,
yes, it is.
Do you not see the paradox
yes, it
here?
is. Now, the
So you want them
opportunity-
to be included to discuss the inclusion?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The opportunity that a national dialogue forum gives you is that, number one, what the president was saying at Sagana the other day. We need to build consensus. I do not want to come and tell you to vote for this. I want us to build consensus on this process. It gives you an opportunity to build consensus. You're here, you're discussing, and all interest groups are actually represented here. You have professionals in this forum. You have politicians in this forum. You've got religious persons in this forum. You've got women leadership in this forum. All of you are actually represented here from across the country.
You don't
Let's
think those
discuss
people
this
would
at this
have
point.
actually had a
and
say?
Then this does not take 6 months or 1 year going around the country. It actually takes maybe 2 weeks at Bomas of Kenya. From this point, we have signed. In fact, like I said, you can actually have those people at Bomas of Kenya putting their signature on this, and it becomes a popular initiative. It goes to IEBC.
No, maybe
it
no.
goes to
Okay, I
IEBC.
see what you're doing here.
IEBC does that,
Okay.
and then we go to the referendum.
Okay,
Or
so
it
you
can
don't
also now
want
be
it to
taken
go
from
through
there.
Parliament.
It
Is
can
that
also
what
be
you're
taken
saying?
from there. It can go to Parliament.
Okay.
From Parliament, once Parliament are discussing this, nobody is actually questioning why is our constitution being made by a band of 230, because that's what you need to pass 2/3 majority, 230 or something legislators, and then it's brought to us.
Okay, so
the
you're
tail
asking
end.
for extra participation through this conference.
It's an opportunity
that-
to build consensus on this.
So that some people who feel left out, perhaps, you talked about church-based organizations, you talked about influencers, teachers, and communities. Do you think these people weren't part of the people who informed this report?
Even in the first case, they were. When the CKRC Yashpal guy went around the country, they spoke to everybody, and then they presented a report, and they presented it back. Everybody is who they presented it to.
This
Let's not
everybody.
present.
Where are these everybody?
Everybody. Yes, I am concerned, Eric. Define everybody, please.
They went around the country. Okay.
They did.
So when they're going around the country, they had the methods of actually collecting views. So they ensured that we have representation from women, from youth, from persons living with disability across every community. Not just at national level, not at provincial level, but going down to district and division level. Right?
Yes.
So they collected all those views. They have volumes, and those volumes are still available in the archives. They have volumes of what they collected, which they put together into a report. Now, this report, they put together a report and took it to the Bomas National Constitution Conference at Bomas. This is what was discussed. This is what you've told us. This is how we've heard it. This is how it is brought to you. And let's discuss it. It was discussed. It was passed at Bomas by 2/3. 2/3 of the Bomas conference actually approved the Bomas draft, which had devolution.
So
Then, of
during
course,
this
it went
conference, Eric,
back to the
you're suggesting a
executive.
vote? I hadn't gotten that bit because I just thought it's just a platform to have further discussions. You're suggesting a vote at this
Consensus.
conference?
Yes, let's show
Okay.
consensus. So we
Okay.
should have consensus.
And
then
that
from
vote is
consensus-
represented by people who have not all been elected.
Yes, no, people who've actually been selected from across the country.
So we select some people to go and represent my views.
Yes.
Who is doing that selection?
The country. So
So how do we do that?
I don't know, but we can create.
No,
the
let's look
formulation.
at the mechanisms,
we can
because
go
here
back-
you're distorting democracy.
We can go back. No,
No,
not.
no,
we can,
absolutely.
We can
You
go back
select
to the,
somebody to go and represent me.
Was the Bombers Conference
Why not
unconstitutional?
MPs?
Was
No,
the
no, no.
Bombers-
Forget that Bombers
No, I
Conference.
can't.
MPs,
Because it's the basis of my argument.
yes, but I'm actually poking holes into that.
Okay, so you're saying the
without you
Bombers
making
Conference was
reference to that,
undemocratic.
let's look at the idea of representation, which is what participation is. Somebody wants to feel they were part of it.
Yes.
Because every single individual can't be. You want to go through this conference
Yes.
and select people who will make decisions on behalf of me.
Can I tell you how?
So
let me tell
we,
you again.
we
the
ignore the
Bombers
elected
Conference.
members of parliament.
We are
who
not
can-
ignoring them.
This can
We're
go
including
directly to them.
We're including them. So we have members of parliament, right? You have a commission. Of course, the BBI team will be there, right? Then you have representatives from religious groups, from professionals, from
That
women.
is the last thing I would want for
Right.
for me.
Then you
for
have
a representative
representatives
of
from
a
political
religious
parties.
group to go and actually vote on my behalf. If
You'll be
anybody is
represented
going
by
to vote,
everybody else.
if you've noticed, Derek, the way things work, if anybody is going to vote, they have actually been elected to vote, to make a vote for you. That's how it should work. Otherwise, you distort democracy. The only people who can vote on a bill have been elected by you to make that decision. You can't select people to then vote for me,
Is it-
whether
is
they're
it-
appointed or
am I-
what have you, but they cannot
Am I
vote for me.
speaking Kigiriama City? Because when I talk about 126 representatives of religious, professional women, those ones have been elected by those various interest groups. They've been chosen by the interest groups to go
Those
and
are
represent them.
those are interest groups. No. But they will be making a on behalf of me.
Yes.
Their vote counts. Whereas I'm not Muslim. Let's say, why should that interest group represent me? The only way somebody
No,
should
then
be able
I-
to
I-
represent
I
you
represent-
is
representing
in
the person
parliament
who's a
if you have
Muslim.
elected them.
You, if
Is
you're
in
not-
parliament
you-
if you have elected them.
So if
No.
you don't fall into that particular interest group, then they're not actually representing
Yet
you.
Yeah.
their
They're
vote
representing
counts against
someone
mine.
else.
That's somebody.
Yet their
And
vote
that
counts against mine.
There is
No.
somebody.
No,
There's
no,
somebody
no.
who is there
This
who's
is why I'm
representing
saying
your
you're
views.
distorting democracy.
Are you a woman? Yes. Are you a professional? Yes. You have.
But maybe I'm
participated in
against
that.
women and empowerment. Who
And you're
knows?
against
Just because I
profession.
fall into that
And you're
category.
against profession.
No.
If you don't participate in any of those, then you've already participated
You
in electing
cannot-
your leader.
You
Listen,
cannot
Jerry,
have a select
your-
group of people
your
go and
representation
vote for
is
the country
guaranteed.
unless it's through the
your
constitution, such as the MP.
Your representation in that is guaranteed. The MP is part of that conference.
The MPs are the only people who should be able to vote on bills, to vote on any laws, to represent
But
me.
Jerry, this particular activity hasn't got to that stage yet.
No, this is what he is suggesting, and this is what I'm telling
Yes.
him. It distorts democracy.
it
the
actually-
idea of
Whoa,
selection,
what am I
selecting
suggesting?
people
No.
to vote for me.
It actually,
What am I
no,
suggesting?
it isn't actually, it doesn't go against the constitution really. He is suggesting a very broad-based representation. Now, it may be tedious, it may seem like it's laborious, but that's what all I hear him suggesting, a very broad-based representation that goes beyond just the MPs. Yes.
Consensus building.
Yes.
That's exactly what I'm actually talking about.
Yes.
This is an opportunity for us to campaign positively for the BBI or on the issues being presented in the BBI report. It's an opportunity to have a sober conversation on this, what has been presented on the BBI report.
Then, if
And
you're
then
going to
from
do that, then
point-
everybody, you shouldn't have a select number of people going there. It should be open to anybody who wants to come and vote for it or against it. If you're going to have any sort
people
of
who are
vote
going
on
to
the
come, they will
BBI,
participate in a referendum. I don't
Yes,
know why
and
you're
this is
assuming
why
that
I'm
what
saying-
I've proposed is actually not going to a referendum.
this is why I'm saying
It will
then
go to a
people will
referendum.
decide. Absolutely, they'll
Okay, then
decide.
Why, instead of having this discussion at Bomas, why don't we just have it in the counties?
As you had suggested,
As you suggested
previously.
earlier.
Yes.
Because, the whole thing...
And
of-
what,
of-
each county votes for it or against
No.
it?
We are
Why
the
are we
dis-
having mini votes on
We
the way
are at
there?
the discussion phase. Remember, you're cascading this thing, okay? It's been brought out. You can't sort of like say you've understood it until people have looked at it and have a little talk about it. And I'm saying this little talk, where instead of going to Bomas, why don't you just have it in the counties?
So the way I look at it is that county has this 47 forums, right? And as also we can just actually have it as one-off, as a national conversation. Because it's a matter that actually affects the entire country. Instead of taking it down to counties and then it's subjected to more, divisive politics around the country, let's have it once. So you have
So
all
let's
those
have the
counties.
divisions in one place.
Yes, you have the county
So that
actually
the
represented.
discussion
It's a
is in one
national
place.
conversation.
And then let me get this right. So you are going to get a select number of people representing different interest groups,
Yes.
as well as some MPs, and they are going to vote on it. So what if I want to vote and I haven't been selected?
You'll participate you'll vote it out at the referendum.
So why not just vote it out of the referendum in the first place?
Consensus building, Jerry.
Yeah.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.
So I'm suggesting a Bomas 3 conference on a BBI report so we can discuss it, build consensus on it. And then from that point on, it now goes through the other political processes. Either it goes to Parliament or it goes around the 47 county assemblies, but then it ends up at the referendum. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Do I make sense? Do I not? You were asking a question, Jerry. Why vote for it and then vote for it again?
No, it's first of all, there's a principle here that doesn't sit well with me, because I think it goes somewhat to taking away from what democracy should be. Democracy should be representative of the people, the leadership for the people, by the people. Now, by the time you're selecting people to then go and make decisions for people, so these aren't people who've been elected. I know you say some of them are MPs. The system, or what you're suggesting, the mechanism you're suggesting and the process you're suggesting, is that we then put this BBI to a group of people, let's say 400 people, half of which are MPs, and the other representatives of different communities who are selected, who will then go and vote on our behalf. That distorts democracy. The very crux of democracy is representation.
No, it's not.
Unless I have
vote.
elected you, unless I have elected you, you shouldn't be voting on my behalf.
So in that case, if we actually go with your argument, don't accept the BBI report. You did not choose anybody to go and collect your views around the country, did you?
No. These
Did
are,
you
no,
choose
no,
these
this
12
is a
people?
completely different mechanism. There's no one voting.
Did you choose
There
these
is no
people?
one voting. It's this idea of voting, and some people have been selected
If
to
a
vote for us.
If a vote is what you have a problem with, remove the vote at Bomas. It's fine.
So how do you reach this consensus? So what is the need
There
for
you
this?
go.
Take it to
There you
Parliament.
go.
No, take it to Parliament. Let it be debated out, because that is one of the mechanisms to reach consensus, because there'll be opposition if need be. Our representatives from both sides of whatever divide that BBI has created will be in Parliament to discuss this and actually pass this or
remember there's an
reject it
issue of
for us.
public
This is the whole point.
Do you remember
They
there's an
have been
issue of public
elected to
participation?
represent us, and it reaches a point where the bill then has to be publicized under the per the Constitution. The bill is then publicized, and they have to facilitate public participation. But with what you're suggesting, that some people are selected to go and vote for us, as who?
They're
In
not
what
voting for
capacity?
you. You
no,
will
no, no. They will,
vote.
no, they will be
You
making.
will vote.
Nobody.
So what are
there
they
should
vo-
be
what
no
would
vote
they-
where
they-
I
They are
can't
part of the
participate.
discussion,
part of-
at,
yeah.
discussion at Bomas
Yeah.
for inclusivity purposes, meaning he mentioned groupings, but the groupings will be broader. The optics of it, beyond it going to the counties, you then have the national dialogue where everybody is represented sort of, and elected leaders also come in. It's just a further exemplification of public participation. Before it then goes to the process that Nyeri is talking about.
Now, what
It's
I
a
am
very-
saying,
it's
if
a
anybody,
very,
if
very
anything is ever going to be
important
voted
part.
on, this is my contention. If anything is ever going to be voted on, it shouldn't be by a select group of people. Because what if I don't believe in them? What if I am pro-homosexuality and everybody there is against, for instance? Let it have been gone through a vote. Anyone who represents me has been voted in. You cannot select somebody who then represents you. And that is why they use the mechanism of Parliament to battle it out. There'll be people on both sides who say we want this or we don't want this. Those are your representatives, members of Parliament. For you to decide that to reach a consensus we can broaden this, let's select some people and they will vote for us. As who? Because they've been appointed by whom?
So because you have your own understanding of what I've been saying, how are
Okay,
these,
you
how
can
are
re-explain it to me,
how
because
are these
you
people-
speak
in your-
of this
in
consensus
your
and then
understanding,
you
how
say
are
there will
these
be a
people-
vote.
How are these people ending up at Bomas in your understanding?
How? Which people ending up
These
at
people that
Bomas?
I'm proposing. How are they ending up in Bomas?
They're elected, but by everybody? By who? Is everybody given an opportunity to elect them?
Like one vote?
You,
like,
you said
like
that
universal
they
suffrage?
represent special interest
Yes.
groups, let's say.
Not all
Okay.
representation, Jerry. You know representation. Not all representation is universal suffrage.
Okay.
You know that, right?
No. Please explain to me what you're suggesting that should happen at Bomas, because I've understood the MPs can be there. Those are elected members of parliament who can represent us.
MPs as elected leaders are going to be there, all right? Then look at other mechanisms of ensuring that, for example, counties are represented. So how are counties going to end up there? Is it all MCAs that are going to be in Bomas, or is it select members of the county assembly? So the county assembly actually picks its team to go and represent people there, all right?
Elected.
Yes.
Okay, I agree with that.
So those ones also end up there. Then let's look at the other interest groups across the country.
Civil
Persons
society.
living with disability, civil society groups, religious organizations, because they are critical, they are a crucial and strong part of this community. Professional groups, women, other groups.
And they're going to vote.
Yes.
On
No. What their main
Explain
idea?
what they're going to vote on.
The main idea is, first of all, to bring them to one forum where they discuss this report.
Where the
They look
elements
at
or the
it.
factors of this report would be then discussed.
Yes.
And made available for public knowledge.
Yes.
Right.
It's part of it, right? So they're discussing it, and then they're saying, all right, so this is what has been proposed. Now, you know what the BBI report is going to propose. It's going to be a report. So out of this, they can then come up with what is called a draft bill. A draft bill that comes out of this particular process, and this draft bill, then they look at it and say, is this what we have agreed in this meeting?
Representative of everybody who
Yeah,
was
just
here.
like we do in committees. Committees actually sign and vote. So is this what we have agreed in this meeting? Have we all agreed that this is it? So a certain number, maybe all of them by unanimity will say, yes, this is what we've agreed. Some of them, just like we saw in Bomas, may say, no, this is not what we agree. And we see it also in committees. We have not agreed, all of us, on this.
And
what
If
they
a
were-
majority,
what if
if a
because of
majority, and
numbers?
if we talk about a threshold, we can set a threshold, either a simple majority or 2/3. If 2/3 of this conference actually approves this, then it goes to the next stage. And the next stage will have been discussed even before that, is what's the next stage? Is it going to Parliament? If it goes to Parliament as a bill, then the Parliament
Yes, I
discusses the
understand
bill.
from there. I want
if
to
it
go
goes
back
from
to
there
the stage before you build on this. So what if, as a result of the numbers, their findings or their consensus and the way they vote goes against what the BBI found that the people on the ground want?
then it's good.
Hold on. So we ignore the people on the ground, we ignore the report, because
No.
maybe we've brought in civil society groups who are maybe
These people-
anti this, and
these
they have
people
their
are not coming
interest.
from Mars, they're coming from the ground.
Which
So
people?
if these people who are going to be in the bombers, these people, like I've just explained, they are coming from the ground. They are representatives of the ground.
Okay. We can agree to disagree
So-
on this one, on the very principle that I don't think anybody selected should actually be making a vote on my behalf. I think only if you've been elected, and elected through elections, especially with something as sort of constitutionally related as this.
You know, in this
I
country.
think
but
we leave
Jerry,
it to the MPs.
you-
There's a reason, there's a mechanism. They're the ones who make those decisions on our behalf. They have been elected.
We will
A
have a
majority of us
conversation.
have chosen them.
We
A
risk-
lot of us were happy
We
with
risk
them.
having a conversation, Jerry, where we say that a certain band of people in Parliament either voted or made sure that they absconded. They didn't have the 2/3 majority to represent the views of
Let
the
me
Kenyan
let
people.
me ask you something.
It
For
can flop in
instance,
Parliament
given
if
Kenya
you don't
is what
build
it is,
consensus.
given Kenya is what it is, and we're building consensus with regards to the constitution or the amendments for it, and we don't have a group, for instance, representing homosexuals, let's say, which we wouldn't, because of course
these days, why don't you just go the LGBTI?
LGBTI.
so that
Throw
you
them all in
because
there.
I never know, we're at
Yes.
LGBTIQ and what have you.
That
But
one.
yes, so we don't have a group representing them. So of course it goes against their interests, and maybe it's further entrenched in the constitution, the illegality of it. That's not fair. These aren't people who've been elected, and they're making decisions for people.
No,
People
they're
who should be making
no.
decisions for us must be elected.
Jerry,
That
they're
is how a
representing a
democracy
group.
works.
Your elected
People-
leaders, your
people-
elected leaders, your
They're
elected leaders
representing
have
a
not
group.
A group
have
of
not
people.
recognized
Yes.
that group of people.
They're representing a group. They
I
may
still-
be fringe,
I
they may be
still-
a minority, but this isn't parliament where the so-called elected leaders sit. This is a gathering of community,
People.
yes, within the country.
Which is fine. They
And
can
the
have a
MPs
discussion.
or
They can have a
MPs in the-
discussion, but they cannot have a vote.
But Jerry, in this instance, even the MPs just form a group. They're part of a group called MPs. So these are the
But they
people
have
who
been elected. You're missing my point with
Oh,
regards
no,
to
I got your
democracy.
point a
You
long
can
time
only
ago.
vote on an issue
All
for me,
members,
on my
all
behalf,
members
if you
of
have been
this
elected by
Constitution
me.
Conference will be elected. The method of election will be different. It does not have to be universal suffrage. It doesn't have to be one
Will I
man,
get an
one
opportunity
vote.
to elect
To
them?
elect
This is my question.
You'll have your opportunity.
How?
As long
What
as
is the
you belong.
mechanism for that?
Now, let's discuss the mechanism
Choose
for,
the
for
group
making
you want
sure.
to belong to.
And let's
You
make
belong
it-
to that group will represent you.
Yes, and let's make
No,
sure
they
that
have
you
to
get
have
some
offenders.
elections.
Yes.
No, democracy doesn't work like
It's
that.
a
You can't
situation
select
room. It's
people.
Kenya's biggest conversation coming up to 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock rather. This is 0719-012-600. You can also call in and participate on this. 0719-012-600.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice it.
Spice up your life.
Creative ways have been used to try and
Traffic.
get out of the traffic that is being presented by Thika Road this morning. There's a route around EABL that matatus are using to get away from the traffic. Though the danger lies in the fact that if you do that, you might get stuck there and then leave Thika Road empty, which also would be a great situation. All right. I really hate to say it, but we have yet another accident on Mombasa Road this morning, trying to get into the city centre, and that has taken us up, interesting enough, right outside a Standard Group buildings, unfortunately. Heading into town, so the emergency services are just moving down the road to try and clear that up. All right, getting into the city centre, Kenyatta Avenue is actually flowing very smoothly as your entry point from many of the major roads, and trying to get out into the city centre and move out into different parts of town. Langata Road and Jugo Road are actually behaving quite well this morning, getting to the roundabout that they culminate in, heading into Bagathi Way from Langata Road and heading into the city centre from the City Stadium roundabout. Not so bad this morning. Remember, still have wet conditions. Use your lights if you have to in some parts of the city. Send us a message or give us a call, shoot out a tweet to us, let us know what you face, where you are, and we'll keep you moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Nyeri Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
So let's pick our calls this morning, 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. You can also post your comment on Facebook via our Facebook page, Spice FM KE, and our Twitter handle, Spice FM KE. Also, the conversation is happening on Twitter via the hashtag The Situation Room. What I'm saying this morning is that we know the BBI report will be presented to the President and the former Prime Minister tomorrow, and then the two leaders are going to present it to the public through some people who are being invited by county commissioners to come to Bomas of Kenya on Wednesday, where it will be presented. What I'm saying is, the president told us when he was, he didn't tell us, he told the leaders from Mount Kenya when he was speaking to them at Sagana last week, but one, that we need to have consensus on this particular project, on this particular initiative. And building consensus on this will require us to actually look at it with a sobriety, discuss it. And I'm saying one way of actually ensuring that we have a proper avenue of building consensus is we do like we did with the current constitution. Take it to a national consultative process, invite people to Bomas of Kenya, have representations from across the country, let them come, let them discuss the content of this BBI report, and then build consensus on it. And from there, it goes either to Parliament or to county assemblies to be voted on, and then it comes to us for a referendum. Phone lines are open. Let me hear what Clinton has to say. Good morning, Clinton.
Good morning, the panel.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Clinton from Kisumu. I'm calling in to actually fully agree with Eric.
Yep.
And for the very first time, Jerry, you're going against your own very principles to do with democracy. Jerry, you have always been for the weighted voting. Now, just to ask a question, what was the mechanism behind weighted voting when you were suggesting it for us?
I suggested it's a philosophical proposition, but given what we live in today, I promote democracy for what it is, as it is. Until it changes, we have to respect democracy for what it is. But as a philosophical proposition, it's something I've put out there, yes.
Is it not the very principle Eric's trying to employ in this?
Yes, absolutely it is. And this is why I'm saying it's not right, not with the democracy that we have today.
Okay, all right, that's all my contribution.
All right, thank you very much, Clinton. Amani, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
Very well,
Good
thank you.
morning.
Okay, now, as far as I know, when you're talking about democracy, it involves many other different levels of democratic play fields, for want of a better word. So you have a universal representation, all right,
Yep.
for certain things. And then you have democracy that includes interest groups and lobbying. That's a fact. In all major developed democracies, that's what happens in democratic environments. So, Jerry, it is a fallacy to say that you can't have interest groups actually participating or lobbying.
They
or
can
even
participate, but
voting.
they cannot vote.
Yes,
This is my
but
point.
Yes, they do vote, by the way.
They cannot vote on an issue as substantial as a constitutional
vote.
reform.
No, they do vote, all right? They may do so even directly to parliamentarians who may be lobbying too, or in different fora. But they do that, yeah? And therefore you cannot say, because I personally was not part of those interest groups, that what they do vote on is invalid. They actually have people behind them, groups behind them, voters like yourself or myself behind them.
Thank you,
So that
Amani.
is part of the democratic platform.
Thank you, Amani. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. That's the phone line to call in.
Again, they can be part of the dialogue, but you cannot have individuals. Clinton got it right. It's weighted voting. You cannot have individuals selected to vote for me unless they're elected. They cannot make a decision on my behalf that is as weighty as something that is
what
to
you're
do with the
saying is that
constitution.
Only MCAs and MPs and senators can actually vote. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. For
and
matters to
governors.
do with the law and bills that are going to affect me, absolutely. I can't have an interest group pass a law. This is legislation
But they're not passing
that
a
is
law.
going to
Now,
affect me.
You see now, Jerry?
But they're not passing a law.
This is a bill.
No,
It's a
hold
bill.
on,
What is a bill?
hold
This
on.
is
They're trying to
get
No.
it to the point of
We
a
have
draft
not
bill.
done
That's
it
what you're saying.
This
It's at
thing
the point
will
where
only
it's
become law, Jerry, when you participate at the referendum. Okay? This is a process of consensus building. So part of that consensus building is all people coming together, representing various interest groups and saying, yes, we have consensus on this. Let's take it to our elected representatives.
Elected representatives.
Elected
is
representatives, either at parliament or at the county assemblies, and then let those ones now also discuss it. But it has consensus from the people. The people have participated. The people have sought consensus. They've reached consensus. From that point, it goes to parliament, either as a bill in the National Assembly, which will require 2/3 majority to become a question that goes into a referendum, or it goes through what
and
we saw
remember,
with
they give it.
Mzigo.
No. There's also a platform whereby they give it back to us for public participation. Parliamentarians
Yes.
are constitutionally mandated to do that.
Yes.
I want to go back to this notion of having interest groups vote for me on a constitutional matter.
No.
Unless I myself also have a right to vote. So anybody can come and vote and participate in this consensus building. Either that or only elected members.
But Njeri, you're the
In
one who's
this particular
framing and
case.
bringing in the voting. Eric is talking about bringing people to participate in this process
And build
as part,
consensus.
yes, as part of the public
How is that
participation
consensus
process.
reached?
The consensus is reached by, how do you reach
No.
consensus? Unanimous?
Let's answer that directly. At some point, they have to vote and
Yes.
agree.
Okay, now it is that voting that I am against. I cannot have a group of people voting for me. I have my elected
They are
members
not.
of
But they're
parliament.
not voting it into
They're
law.
voting-
Your
They're
elected
voting to
members-
reach.
your
Hold
elected
on, Eric.
members of
Okay, let's
parliament.
agree to
Are they
disagree on that
voting-
point.
are they
Let's agree to
voting-
disagree.
At this point,
Yeah?
they're not voting it into law. They're voting to to reach consensus on
They're
this
voting to
particular
omit.
issue.
Our
to
very
reach consensus
constitution
means
followed this same
omitting
process.
and adding some things to that
And
BBI.
part of
that
that
report.
vote is your elected representative. That is your MP or your MCA is also in this process.
Those are the only
Let's hear
people
from
who should
Benjamin.
represent us.
Benjamin, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing? Thank you for calling in from
I'm
Nairobi.
fine. Yes. Now, I've been listening to Nyeri and follow her very keenly. But today I want to follow her. Let me ask her, how many members of parliament do we have in our national assembly?
290 thereabouts.
No, we have a 300
Okay.
and something, 45.
Elected
How many-
or nominated too.
Total.
How many of them are nominated?
Okay, that's what you are coming to.
Yes. Do they vote?
They do.
Yes. Were they elected by anybody?
No.
But we
They were
voted a
elected.
constitution that allows them to be nominated. We were happy with that. Everybody agreed to that in the constitution.
And
So unless now we have a referendum to allow these people to vote for us. Remember,
You see,
constitutionally we agreed to nominated members of parliament. So we were
Correct,
happy
I
to do
agree,
it.
Jerry.
Yes?
Hold on. Let's hear Benjamin.
But you've been saying that somebody cannot vote on your behalf, yet they were selected. Don't you see that there is a contradiction there?
But I've already agreed to that in the first instance before it happened. But now, when we're running towards something and working towards something, and people start voting on my behalf, I voted to allow those nominated MPs to vote on my behalf. So I have agreed.
Okay. Thank you.
Benjamin, thank you very much. He's calling in from Nairobi. You know, what I'm raising this morning is that the BBI report is going to be presented to the president and the former prime minister, and then it will become public. And I'm saying it's important that this document actually now goes through consensus building. And one sure way of consensus building is having a national dialogue, having a national consultative process, and I'm calling it Bombas 3. We know there was Bombas 1 in 2002, Bombas 2 in 2003. Now let's have Bombas 3 in 2019 or 2020, which discusses the BBI report, and it represents people from across the country, various interest groups. And then those people, once they seek consensus, it goes to the next stage. And the next stage, which we haven't been told, or we haven't actually discussed what the next stage was going to be, it could be that these representatives from across the country append their signatures. Those signatures are taken to IEBC, they are verified, and then it goes through the process of going to the county assemblies, and it seeks consensus from county assemblies, like we saw with the Punguza Mzigo bill. Or this bill can be taken to the National Assembly, and the National Assembly then discusses this bill, takes through the lawmaking process. It gets 2/3 majority. It comes to us for a referendum. Either way, it'll end up at the referendum stage. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let's hear from Joel, who's calling in from Kericho. Joel, good morning.
Salama kabisa Eric, habari ya asubuhi.
Salama kabisa.
Swali langu leo ni hao watu wenye wamechaguliwa kwa kila kaunti 100 ni criteria gani walichaguliwa wachague hao? Ama wana represent nani?
Watu gani?
Okay? Wenye hao 100 wenye walichaguliwa kwa kila kaunti vile wanafaa waende ikulu.
Oh, the ones who are coming to Bomas on Wednesday.
Walichaguliwa haki.
Hatujui.
Haya, number 2. Mimi ni mlemavu ya? Na mimi maoni yangu haikuchukuliwa. Sasa mimi wazo langu nani atanipeleke maoni yangu pale?
MP wako.
MP yangu sikutana naye hata sijui penye wako. Tangu chakula shana naye.
Kwa hivyo wewe unaweza taka kwenda Bomas useme yako pia.
Sitaki kwenda kwa kile nikisema tu ni kwa nini hiyo kitu venye president alisema hiyo kitu ikitolewa kila raia apewe vile alikuwa amesema, ndio kila mtu asome. Ikiwa baada ya kuvote ivotiwe tu hivyo vile kila mtu ameona kama ni kuvote.
So ikuja direct kwa kila mtu?
Ikuja direct kwa kila mwananchi venye wako.
Hakuna haja hata kwenda kwa bunge.
Hiyo ni kuharibu pesa ya raia bure. Okay? Yeah. Ikuje tu kwanza kwa raia wasome, kila mtu kama mtu ameridhika, alafu sasa tuambie kama ni kuvotia ikuwe referendum ni sawa.
Lakini kuna vitu mingi ndani lazima ikuwe reduced to 1 or 2 questions.
Kuna hiyo vitu ndio tunasema ikuje kwa raia ndio tujue hiyo vitu mingi ni nini. Unaona? Kama okay? Kama hizo sijui, nimesema mimi ni mama sijui kama mawazo yangu imepelekwa, mimi sijui na siwezi sema itapelekwa ama itapelekwa sijui. So ikuje tu kwa raia wasome, kila mtu ajisomee, kama ameridhika ikiende kwa referendum, mtu tu vote kulingana vile amesoma. Kama ni umeridhika ni sawa usome, vote. Kama hujaridhika ni sawa.
Itakuja kwako. Hata we haven't even seen the actual report itself. But it will come to you.
Njeri, mbona kama inakuja kwangu watu wetu wanaweza kuharibu pesa ya raia kwa nini? Why? Na tuko na
kwa bunge.
Tuko na shida mingi kwa nchi.
Tuko na shida mingi kwa nchi.
Eric ndo anataka kuharibu pesa ya raia, anataka even more processes, anataka kuweka conference, sijui nani na nani wakuja wafike consensus voting. Si kitu ni ya raia the only ones wanatakiwa kuvote on it either through your MPs or directly.
MPs utafanya kwa MPs nasema wao wafanye kwa bunge. Hii kitu kwanza ikuje kwa raia vile nakwambia Njeri, hii tusome. Alafu sasa lakini ile shida yangu ni kwamba watu wanapelekwa kwa bomas. Sijui kazi yao ni nini.
Hiyo ni kulaunch tu, tukitakuja kwa raia on Wednesday you'll read the full report.
Ilonje kesho kwa State House Philip President amesema atapokea report kesho. Hiyo itoshi.
Bas.
Asante sana.
Asante Joel. Basically saying even this public launch of this document
it's not necessary.
It's not necessary. He just wants it to come to the
throw it all out, man. Baby bathwater, everything away.
Basically, I'm sure that in the entire process there has to be a mechanism, of course, where it's published and there has to be civic education, and it's brought down to the people to interact with it and interrogate before it goes to a referendum. Obviously, that will happen. So the conversation continues on social media platforms, Spice FM KE on Facebook and on our Twitter handle Spice FM KE. Our hashtag is The Situation Room. We are live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke. This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. It's 8:15. Good morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
16 minutes after 8.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Spicing up your morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have Nyeri Thorn Nduoko and CT Muga. Talk about leadership.
Well, actually, excuse me, my voice permitting, I actually want to talk about power. Most of last week and even on the weekends, the thing that was constantly in the media was it centered around one individual, the governor of Nairobi. And there seems to be this focus on, by the Anti-Corruption Commission and other state agencies, on what it is that his government have been doing, and he specifically what he has done with some alleged corruption moves. But if you looked at other articles that appeared in our papers, in our dailies, they went further. They talked about other governors within this country who have similar cases. And it looks like it doesn't leave very many governors out of this particular loop. And then there are always these issues that come up about when is it that the people who are elected to represent their people, to look after the welfare of their people, when do they actually do what it is that they are supposed to do? And how effective do they do it? Now, why this discussion? It boils down to something that I want to look at, and that is this issue of power. Is it vested, or does it rest, or does it augur well for the individual when it's rested in the individual and his ability, or in the office? And at what point do you actually divide the two? Because if you look at what it is that has been playing out in the papers, clearly it's a matter of power. Somebody is in a position of authority because they have been elected. So it's power that they've been given. And the power is meant to carry out certain public functions for the individuals. And by the time the agencies that deal with security and the law come in, it means those powers are being misused, or they believe the powers are being misused. Now, the governor of Nairobi argued that those are the issues that have been brought up by the Auditor General. And I'm sure if we talk to other governors, they will tell you the same thing, because the Auditor General is the office of the Auditor General often brings out these particular issues. There was a time gone by when the office of the Auditor General seemed to be playing even the role of the opposition in the country, because they would bring out issues that nobody else dared to. And they were seen as being anti the government, and yet all they were doing was reporting what they found. They were not creating anything new. They were merely reporting. Okay. Now, we find ourselves at a crossroads. This morning we're discussing the issue of drunk driving. And this morning, our news of traffic involved more accidents than it involved the flow of cars. And also involved people dying. In the papers, again, we've read about situations that happened within Nairobi, where young school children, it was reported children who had been informed to girls, were found in some sort of brothel. In Mombasa, we hear of a situation where a gang of young people have been terrorizing the residents. And it goes on and on. And against this backdrop, you have a mudslide that has now claimed 41 lives in West Pokot. Now, if someone is in a position of authority and power, why is it that we don't hear or we don't get to hear of more news where this power and privilege and authority that these individuals have actually been used to better the lives of people, so that news consists of good things that we hear happening as a result of this power? Why is it that we do not get this? Well, the answer is very simple. When instead of power and good governance, you have a situation where individuals who have these powers vested in them have taken it upon themselves to believe that this is actually power of their own which they can use as they see fit, then it's very, very unlikely that the good that I speak of will actually ever see the light of day.
There's a positivity as we allow CT to, grab some warm water. We are nursing your voice, all of us. We are nursing your voice this morning. So as we allow for City to, grab some warm, there's some positivity as well from that comes out in the public, and we see leaders who actually use their positions to work and to do better for themselves, right? So, for instance, we talk about, you keep mentioning and you keep bringing him up in conversations, John Mishuki, the late minister he was in transport at that point, then he also went to the treasury, he was the minister for finance.
He went to environment.
He was in interior security, he was in environment, he cleaned up Nairobi River. We've seen people like those. People nowadays talk about, for example, Dr. Fred Matiang'i and what he has done with the education system, trying to clean up the exam system, together with Professor George Magoha in education now, and what the work they've done. So yes, we've seen individuals who are there. The thing that I agree with you is that they're not as many, but also it's boiling down to somebody's own character, whether they are really boyish in terms of how they come out and push an agenda. They're very vocal, they're visible across the country in all the spheres of life, or whether they have some soft power. They actually do influence things without us seeing them. Are there some leaders that we feel that we don't necessarily have to see?
Remember, we voted for people, not policies. That's the difference. We vote for personalities here as opposed to policies. When we move away from personalities, it's because we're voting on party lines, which are also personality informed at the top. So some people might have voted for Sonko, not for Sonko, but for Jubilee. But most people would have voted for Sonko because of his personality. So we can't then expect policies to be put into place that supersede the personality. The person will be the person. And until these offices are sufficiently sort of institutionalized and grow stronger, then we can expect the personality to supersede the office, I think, even just mentally. When I think of the governor of Nairobi, I don't think of offices and structures and so on. I think of Sonko.
Now, if I were to go with your argument, what you're saying is this, that the lives and the livelihood of individuals within even the nation then, if I take the logical conclusion, then depend on the personality of the person at the helm. That's what you're saying.
To a certain extent, until our institutions grow strong enough and robust enough, look at the US, even with Trump, things are still working. Because democracy,
despite Trump,
absolutely, in spite of.
No, it's because Trump is working.
The system that has been put in place, they're not going to allow the toppling of the system.
Strong enough.
That's an argument for another day, but because
no, we can draw parallels from there, because what I'm saying is, until we have a system and our institutions that are strong enough to withstand any personality, we will always have to rely on the person at the top, the personality. And remember, we vote for personalities. We don't vote on ideologies. We don't vote on policies.
Well, that's because even the people who are coming through as individuals, they're not pushing forth particular policies or ideologies. They're pushing forth the power that their personality would have. Unfortunately, even during the electioneering period, they're not they mention, we will build more schools, we will build more roads, but it usually is the I, me, and myself kind of ideology that comes through in terms of me as an individual and what I then would be able to do. It's not really about what will come through in terms of development infrastructure, for example. And so people vote based on what they're given.
Oh, absolutely. There's very little choice for the Kenyan voter, I'll say that. But having said that, we do see structures in place where, the president can't make roadside decrees to have people jailed and so on. So you do have some structures that are emerging to be stronger than the personality. But at the moment, as things stand, with Nairobi, for instance, I think it's a prime example, he is bigger than the office.
I think personality is key everywhere. Yeah, you look at some leaders, some global leaders, and they stand out because there's what they push for, and they're able to rally people around certain causes. So despite the institutions actually also being there and being strong, the personality at the head of that institution is also very critical for the success of that organization, that institution. If you have a personality who's not as strong, not as vocal, not as clearly minded as another, then you'll be able to actually tell the difference between this institution and that institution, and you can even draw parallels. When so-and-so was the head of this particular institution, when so-and-so was president of France, France had actually expanded more than it has done under the leadership of so-and-so.
But remember, there's also a lack of ideology underpinning the leadership in the first instance. You'll find in the West and the countries that you're talking about. So if it's France, there's the left wing. So his idea of a personality is how strong of a left-winger he is within the party. So it's something completely different. Whereas here, it's just, what is this guy about?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, CT. Make your point again. Perhaps I've digressed slightly.
If we're drawing parallels, let's draw a parallel. Let's start with Margaret Thatcher, for instance, all right? And look at, she was the leader of the Conservative Party in the UK, okay? Now, she brought about changes that have not just had far-reaching consequences. Today, they still have far-reaching consequences. But her personality was what people spoke of more than the office. I mean, she wasn't the first prime minister of that nation. There had been other prime ministers. And she stood out.
The Iron Lady.
Yes. Now, why was she called the Iron Lady? Because she was resolute in the decisions that she made.
No-nonsense leader. Exactly.
Yes. We called her no-nonsense because I call it clarity. She had clarity, and she pushed with that clarity and didn't vacillate, didn't allow for much change.
And there was also no confusion in terms of no ambiguity about what she stood for. And so then even when they came through as policies or then governance agenda, it was clear. This is where we are going, because it was clear coming from the top.
There was clarity.
Yeah.
Now, you see, this for me was a situation where the individual transcended that issue of individual power and became an institution themselves. Because when you look at the agenda that she had, the policy she pushed forth, they were then over time attached to her. They even acquired her name.
Thatcherism.
Yes. Now, what I am saying is this. Nyeri talked about a benevolent dictator. And I have argued against it, saying you don't actually need a benevolent dictator. What you need is an individual who is focused, not necessarily dictatorial. Even within a democratic space, they have the ability to bring the changes that you require within a democratic space. Not dictatorship, the same policies. It's just that they're clear and they're focused and they push the agenda.
Do they have to be loud and voice and visible?
No. I was drawing a parallel.
Let's filter your just said statement.
Let me give the parallel I want to give, then we'll filter it. Is that okay? Okay. Let's come back to our own country. Excuse me. President Kibaki didn't make noise.
No.
You hardly heard of him. But if you look at his presidency, the guy was focused.
Yep.
He was very focused, and he had an agenda, and he pushed it. We can still feel the effects of that. He pushed it.
Yep.
Now,
Kivuta Kibwana in Makueni.
Yeah, actually, if you follow my thread of thinking, you'll be able to pick up leaders within the country and people who have brought about change because of that same focus.
And it's interesting because then the individuals around them, whether they be technical advisors, whomever they be, somehow will catch that very same fire
They'll
of
fall in
focus
line.
and they'll fall in line.
They'll fall in line.
And that's what you do because you say, okay, because you didn't find them, like you say, hopping about, speaking here, shouting here, the other place,
Picking
getting
their
things
noses,
done. Right,
as you
exactly.
like to say.
As I like to say. You didn't find them doing that. You didn't find them up and about, but the work was done. The focus was maintained and the results were achieved, and it was very clear. That means that with that kind of focus that you kind of infect everybody else with without necessarily shouting, everybody just gets along with it and we keep this ball rolling. The converse would happen then when you have somebody who is not focused, and then everybody around them also seems to imbibe those very same values, as it were. And
But
then
they're
you have
loud and present and visible and all. How then do we choose? How do we tell? Because of course, the process of electing this person is big with how we see them, not necessarily with how.
Hold on, we haven't agreed on what CT is saying yet. We've moved on to the next
The whole
stage.
purpose of a discussion, you don't have to agree.
No,
but I do
He's
agree
moving
that-
on to how we then choose this person, whereas
how
I
we
haven't agreed that this is what we need. Wait,
focus. Yes,
I had
I
something
agree
to
on
say.
that.
I haven't
Yeah.
said that's what we need. I've said,
And neither have I.
how do we tell?
No, there was
Yes.
something
How can
CT
you
said.
tell as a voter?
There was something CT said, and he said it's about somebody being focused and whatever is around them doesn't matter. I don't agree with that, and I want to use today's example of corruption and the separation of powers and the limited powers that the president has to fight corruption. And it's not in any way indicative of whether he's focused or whether he has the will to fight corruption or not. It is the fact that there will be barriers given the systems we're trying to achieve in terms of democracy and ensuring that the judiciary remains independent. There is no way, no matter how much His Excellency wants to have somebody jailed, and no matter how much information he thinks he has, there is no way he can go past the law and not go through right to a fair trial, due process, and so on. This guy has to go through the EACC, let's say, but most importantly, he has to go through another arm of government which is independent of the presidency. So if this arm of government itself is actually corrupt, if this is where the bottleneck lies, no matter how focused the president is, no matter how hard he wants to fight the president,
see the efforts of the presidency, the executive, and thus we'll also be able to see the bottleneck in the judiciary.
Which is what we have been seeing. But because what I'm saying is these institutions work side by side, it can kind of taint somebody's resolve in terms of perception until we understand that these institutions are independent but heavily reliant on each other.
That happens when the resolve is not clear. It
The
is
resolve-
spoken of, but not seen.
The resolve
Let's take
for
a look at
Uhuru
what's
to
happening
fight
on the
graft
roads
is
first.
very clear.
Let's actually take a look at what's happening on the roads, and then we come back and see people's resolution.
.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Traffic.
All right, Langata Road is at a standstill, gridlock. What other adjectives can we use to describe what Langata Road is? It's quite a mess today. Trying to get into the city centre is not going to be a pretty picture, unfortunately. All right, looking at different parts of the city in Westlands, it's in bad shape. There are potholes all over the place, and this is affecting traffic. Kiambu Road, just before the DCI headquarters, is chock-a-blocked. Traffic is not moving at all. James Gishuru Road, trying to get into Westlands, also is giving us a bit of a headache today. Trying to get into town from Westlands was not so bad, but unfortunately now it is. On Thika Road, also with all the accidents that we've had on the road today, traffic is slowly snaking into town. Hopefully we will not have reports of any more. If you're stuck somewhere and you find an alternate route, do let us know how we can keep you moving this morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
27 minutes to 9 o'clock. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We have Jerry Thorne, Nduoko. My name is Eric Latif, and CT Muga. CT Muga is saying that leadership and positions of power also have a strong, the kind of character we have at the helm of an institution influences how that institution works.
the institution itself has power vested in a position like the presidency, and then there's the individual who now becomes say, the president. Yes, and I was saying that I gave example. There are people whose personalities will now supersede even the individual, and they will be in themselves become an institution, simply by virtue of what we're calling the power, but I call it the focus. So now Nyeri brought in the discussion and said, sometimes when you can have a constitutional structure that limits the very thing that I'm saying, and if it does, that's when now the personality comes out. How the individual is able to maneuver within those set limits and how they're able to bring out what they require, irrespective and despite and in spite of the prevailing circumstances.
Well, then we need to question what leadership is, because you could say that by His Excellency not interfering with the judiciary, we saw even with the annulment of the elections, you could say he's upholding the very tenets of democracy, and that's a great leader. With the judiciary being a bottleneck in terms of the fight against corruption, if he was to then interfere, are we saying he's not a good leader because he's not upholding the tenets of the democracy that we have in terms of the separation of powers? Or are we saying, oh, he's great, he's ensuring that we're fighting corruption? It becomes, you're caught between a rock and a hard place. Do you want to remain institutionalized, or do you want to start personalizing governance? It's very important that we remain with institutionalized governance.
You know what I was saying in response to that, Jerry, was what is the president's role in that whole fight of corruption, against corruption, right? There's a point of, first of all, you are the one who has appointed some of these leaders. So there's taking action against them. There's also the point of ensuring that your executive arm of government is actually conducting investigations, getting sufficient evidence, and taking them through the process, prosecuting them. And then there's the independent arm of government that's called the judiciary, and how the process now goes through the judiciary. Now, you'll be able to judge the president's efforts and his resolve towards fighting corruption by, one, looking at how is he dealing with individuals who are accused or who are named in corruption.
Absolutely.
What
and
action
I think
has
it's,
he taken?
I think it's
Number
been
two,
very obvious.
Number two, how has he ensured that his executive arm of government is actually well facilitated and well motivated to investigate fully and get proper.
The first thing we know in terms of giving these agencies financial muscle, he's invested very heavily in the EACC. There's no doubt about that. There was the multitask agency that was formed to work in collaboration to ensure that we fight graft. I think also very importantly, we've seen that there's no impunity. What we would have seen ordinarily if the will wasn't there is people who are close to the president or ministers or people in his executive and his cabinet able to come to him when they've been accused and they've been asked to step down and get some sort of pardon or impunity through him. We have seen with the likes of Rotich, Thuge, that would never have happened. It has never happened in any other administration where you have the CS for Treasury being charged.
We have
seen it so many times.
We have.
Why you don't?
Where you have seen men as powerful. Okay, such as
yes, we have Muraria.
Daudi Muraria was a finance minister under Kibaki,
and even known to be Kibaki's friend,
right?
Personal friend, right? For long was confidant in DP. Went to court. His PS also went to court. We've seen that.
We saw Murungaru.
Excuse. Occasionally, there's some gaps in my information when I wasn't.
Amos
Kimunya. I mean, the list goes on.
Okay, but what we can see is that he's not giving any impunity even to people who were known to be very close to him. We have to remember. We have to also remember that everybody has a right to a fair trial. So even if his cabinet is accused, Q injury and so on, and unless there's evidence, you've got to follow that.
And
you
that
can't have
step
down.
That is something that he has power over. You don't have to actually jail this person.
But remember, they can also
person.
these things can be weaponized to get people out of office and so on. So he also knows what he's doing as the president.
The resolution of the president,
as an individual, it's not with any accusation he's going to say step down. Where is the evidence? He'll give a warning. He said this hasn't gone as well as it should. Maybe he has more information than we do as members of the public, but he can't for every accusation. We know that accusations of corruption can be weaponized and used against people in a witch hunt.
Since you brought the discussion, has anybody been asked to step down?
Well, there were the 6 individuals in the first government, Since then,
That were asked to step down.
Those ones were asked to step down. We know them. We know Charity Ngilu was asked to step down. We know several other cabinet secretaries were asked, to step down. And he actually made that statement in Parliament and said, this is
And
the
I
action
think
I'm
this
taking.
is evidence of the fact that he's focused. But remember, he is dealing with an institutionalized way of leadership. It can't be personalized. I remember one of our professors once saying, if ever you have the choice between the law and Jesus, let's say.
It was the devil. Come on.
Absolutely. Always take the law. Always. Because the devil will come disguised, won't he? So always follow. This is the argument for institutionalized leadership over personalized leadership. So yes, you can have somebody as strong as Mishuki. I think CT makes reference to him quite often in here, and his strength and so on. But we still must do things within the realms of the law.
And that's what Mishuki did. He actually did things. He kept repeating, I am not instituting a new law. The law exists. I'm just saying, let's follow the law.
We have to also remember, under this presidency, we spoke of Kibaki. Under this presidency, we've also got the new constitution, which not only decentralizes a lot of power, but it also breaks up power. It limits power with the separation of powers and the independent bodies and so on. So HE is having to navigate through quite a lot. Power has been decentralized, it's been limited, it's been separated. He's not going to get the results people want with, let's say, the corruption story. He's going to push for it, the will be there, but I don't think this lack of convictions is reflective of his focus and his will to fight corruption. There's too many other factors in place.
Is this discussion about, the president's fight against corruption?
No.
It's about the will of the individual at the helm.
It's Nyeri who's brought the president into the discussion. I was talking about political power and how best to wield it. Okay, I gave the example of Kibaki. I gave the example of Thatcher. I was going to cascade it down to even our parastatals within a certain era and look at individuals who have stood out. And if you look carefully in this country, you will find, even from the Moi era, Kenyatta era, there were always individuals who stood out.
Yes.
You looked at the ministries, and you realize this particular individual is actually doing something that other people don't seem to be able to do with his ministry.
Still within the confines of the law.
Yes.
So it's possible for that to be done then.
We've seen that with the education ministry, haven't we? When Matiang'i was there for certain. We'll see what his successor does with that. Okay.
Yes.
Do you think maybe sometimes it's very good PR as well? We saw that with Alfred Mutua, and we know that, of course, being a PR man. But then you hear some, negative comments from people, his residents in that county. So is that PR or
work? Because PR is
only take you so far.
a good front.
You see, PR is not a negative thing, right?
Yes.
So first of all, PR is just the publicity.
It depends
for
who
it.
you are.
And how you create that publicity and make it shine on your bright side. So if we even talk about Machakos, for instance, there are very many things that actually have been done in Machakos. Things that were started. If you go to Mlolongo today, the public toilet there that was started, and people are saying, "Oh, this thing, we've seen it in Nairobi." It's still operational. It's still very clean. It's still well managed, and it's there. Public toilet. Some things that are simple.
Mlolongo falls in Machakos County?
Yes, it does. Yeah. Yes, it does. And all the others, public toilets as well. If you look at the stadium, last week we were talking about that stadium.
Yeah.
Just refurbished the stadium. It's still in use. It's actually being used for national events. We had a national event held there. We have football tournaments and rugby tournaments being held there. So some leaders, you'll see a leader who stands out and is resolute, and he can be seen.
I don't think maintaining public toilets is sort of the yardstick that we should be using to
It's a
measure.
perfect example.
It's an example of something that you do, which is
one.
Well, given the
It's a perfect
billions that each
example.
county is getting,
Yes.
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 Is
Is that how far gone we are than having public
welfare.
toilets?
What are the needs? What are the needs of the people in
What
the
are the
market?
indicators? Yes.
What are the needs of the people in the market in Mlolongo?
Okay.
What do they need? They need
no. I
sanitation
recant my
services.
statement.
And then also remember, and he even said it the other time when he called in. He said Machakos has constantly been on the list of counties that require emergency relief food. And since I came in, I instituted a plan to ensure that we get out of that. And now we are not in that
We are
list.
no longer on the list.
So about food security and
Sounds
such.
like you're on the list of
indicator.
his payroll, Eric. the
No,
way we're
but
doing at the moment.
why don't we bring it to the present and look at, say, our current governor of the central bank? The policies. He's not breaking, he's just following policies that already exist. And look at what he's doing in the central bank. and look at what he's doing for the government. Look at how he's enforcing the very functions of the central bank. You go to the previous administration.
Yeah.
We are having problems with power. There's a guy called Eddie Njoroge. His achievements were the complete opposite of what we're seeing now. He introduced more power production, some stability. We're having problems at the port. There's a gentleman who preceded this one even before that, somebody called Brown Ondego. During his time as the boss, the port made huge strides. These were individuals. They were not breaking the law.
So what is your assertion?
They were not bringing in a new law.
No.
They were not
No.
doing anything that
They were
was
using
radical in
what
terms
they
of
had.
change, using what they had
within the
to make
immediate
sure
work.
that we are moving
Yes,
forward.
to do what they were supposed to
do
do.
anyway.
Yes.
And so now when we come in and say that, we have individuals who've come in and because of their personalities, no, these personalities can actually be then used properly. So you have somebody who is forceful and loud and not doing anything, but then you have the same another individual with the same attributes, but it's making sure that they're pushing their way through and
they
making
keep pushing
sure,
it.
and they keep pushing
it.
until we get where we're supposed
Yes.
to be going.
Yes.
Absolutely. In that case, then you would say, okay, right. With what then we have on offer, that it's possible to see that it can work because we've seen individuals who've made it work, not just in Kenya, but around the world. So we can't say that now, okay, I would like to, but the institution does not allow me to. You're within an institution where there are some things that you actually can do and can be recognized.
If you're talking about internationally, you've had situations now in the United States, something very interesting. You've had cabinet secretaries resigning because they disagree with the president. They have a view and they say, no. This I don't. They were appointed. They stepped down.
Yes.
Now, that's an individual taking an active position and saying, no, I am not going to be party to this because it goes against the very thing we're supposed to do.
In the first place.
Yes.
I'm going to open up the phone lines now, 0719-012-600, so you can join in this conversation. We're talking about personalities versus institutions, or personalities with institutions. Is it about institutional handicaps, or is it about a personality's capabilities and resolution to deliver and achieve? That's what we're having a conversation on. 0719-012-600. It's 8:45. Good morning.
.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Phone lines are open, 0719-012-600. City Muga has given us examples both locally and internationally. He's talking about individuals who've occupied positions of power in certain institutions, and they almost became the institution itself, where they were very clear on what they wanted to do at their position of authority, and they did it and they achieved.
So those who don't, do you think it's intentional, or do you think perhaps they don't have the wherewithal to navigate through all the politicking and so on?
You know, the word incompetent is not necessarily a negative word.
It's descriptive.
It's just descriptive.
Right.
And I think that's why it just fits in.
So they like the competence.
Yes.
I want us to look at Magufuli. Does he encapsulate what you're trying to say here?
In many ways, he does. There are people who complain about his style. They say he's many things. But you judge someone by the results.
Yep.
Not the activity that takes place in between, the results. Why is it that we rate our politicians badly? Because their solution to problems seems to be words. There's a problem, you talk about it. There's
Action
further complaint,
zero.
you talk about it. And then when there's even more talk, you talk about forming a commission that will talk about the
Some
problem.
more.
So we're always talking. And the problem it doesn't remain where it was. It gets worse.
And in the case of Magufuli, you can see the results.
Yes.
For instance, just one. The Dodoma is the administrative capital of the country,
It
and
is.
Dar es Salaam is the commercial capital.
It is.
And over some years before that, people had actually moved their operations to Dar es Salaam.
Yeah.
And one day, Magufuli just said, from Monday, I'll be
Reverse all of
operating
this,
from
yes.
Dodoma.
Yeah.
So all government officers, if I come to the office and I don't, find you, don't come. Just don't report.
How
And
you
he
get there,
basically
that's
moved
not
it.
my
It's
problem.
not my problem.
I'm going to be there.
Yes.
But there's been some adverse effects for the economy on a number of in a number of areas.
Which economy? Dodoma's economy? Or
No,
Dar es Salaam?
for Tanzania as a whole, because of Magafuli's ways. First of all, of course, investor confidence. When you see somebody taking into their own hands the law, you yourself as a company becomes very wary of investing in there, because what you want is, in case there's any conflict, in case you come across anything that needs the law, you want it to be resolved legally and through a legal framework, not through an individual. So that can send investors packing, which did happen with Tanzania. And also,
Which
I think his
investors left?
crackdown. Well, I don't know which ones in particular, but this was the general sentiments amongst investors, and you saw FDI confidence actually go down in the indexes. But also, I think with his crackdown on corruption, what tended to happen was, and these are some of the unintended benefits of corruption, because there was a trickle-down effect with corruption in Tanzania, where people felt the sort of benefits for working or being related to people who were corrupt. So what happened is he stopped corruption overnight, cut out so many ghost workers and so many avenues through which public officials could be corrupt. And as a result, I know somebody personally that was responsible or was helping build a block of flats for a corrupt official. So they lost the contract as a contractor. Of course, there was a number of jobs that was lost with that, because this corrupt official was no longer getting his money as the ghost worker within whatever ministry or government agency he was working for. As a result, a lot of people lost their jobs.
And as a result,
And
are
so-
hospitals better equipped? Yes. As a result, are more roads being built? Yes. I mean, where do we draw the line?
No,
Actually,
you,
what
you might
Jerry
have
said-
that, but
it's true.
There's
but
an
Yeah.
organization called Global Competitive Awareness. Their report 2017-2018, they actually said the complete opposite, that investor confidence shot up
in Tanzania.
Tanzania.
as a result of this.
Because of the fact that somebody was taking
Okay,
control
so-
of the
on
way
so
in which
corruption and
things-
reducing it.
That would have
reduces-
been afterwards that maybe that happened. But I know initially, with some of his roadside decrees and the way he was acting, it would have thrown a lot of investors off. That was all over.
A lot of corrupt investors
Yes.
would have obviously
No.
have left the country.
Initially, investors generally like to work within the law. So they like to make sure that
not
if there's ever a
entirely
dispute,
true.
no, they want to know if there's a dispute. You're not going to kick me out of the country at your whim.
Jerry,
You're going
I'm
to
actually-
ensure
I'm
that we
actually
do this
using
through
your
a legal
argument here
framework.
about people who adhere to capitalistic norms. They're profit driven. The focus is not to abide by laws.
No.
the
In
bottom
case there's a
line.
Yes.
dispute, of course, it's a bottom line.
about
But
the money.
as an investor, if you're going into a country, you want to ensure that at least they uphold the rule of law. Or if in case there's a dispute, you'll go through courts, and the president can't one day decide, any company beginning with C is going to be shut down today. Those are the sort of roadside decrees that people felt Magufuli was making at the beginning of his presidency. If we go back to, was it 2015 he came in, or 2016?
16. What I saw actually from my side is the president actually going and finding an incomplete project and saying, why has this project not been
finished.
completed? And he says, where is the contractor? Contractor, stand up. Where is the district commissioner or the provincial commissioner? Stand up, explain. And the minister, explain to me right now, because the people are here and they've been complaining about this particular road or this particular hospital or this bridge not being completed. And when the investor does not have an answer, he says, we're going to blacklist this individual.
They won't come
until
back and do business in this
yes,
country again.
because they can't explain why they have not finished the job that they were given.
No, don't get me wrong. I mean, I have nothing wrong with Magafuli's approach. I'm actually pointing out some of the pitfalls in that personalized leadership over institutionalized leadership. I'm pointing out what the pitfalls could be, and those are two examples.
Take, for instance, a country like Uganda, where people have complained and said that the president is a dictator, or even Rwanda. These are some of the safest countries you could actually go to in East and Central Africa. Personal safety, as we call it. Now, it's a benefit. All these things we talk about, investor confidence, have investors stopped coming. They troop to those countries.
They do.
Troop.
I do see,
Again, strong individual. What do the Westerners call it? Dictatorship. But it's a strong leadership.
It's not necessarily actually even dictatorship. Let's take on this call. Lydia, good morning.
Good morning, this is Lydia.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, why is the parliament always looking empty, being the biggest parliament in the world, the most bloated in the world? It's always empty. And then having jobs to be done. I totally agree with Nyeri when she said the other day on Friday, I think, that we should have ministries to do the job, like Ministry of Roads. Right now, you pay Roads Board, you pay Highway Authorities Board, you pay Rural Authorities Board, you pay Backlane Authorities Board, you pay Rural Urban Authorities.
Too
The
many.
money is thrown everywhere. And there's nobody you can pick out to ask any questions.
Right.
But the Ministry of Road will be a permanent office that they know so much money came, this much will go there. Is it complete? Yes, it is, and so and so.
Right.
And about the referendums, I think the radios, after the news, should read each one's PBI, Punguza Mizigo, and the other one. Read it for us after the news time or whatever. That's the best to educate everyone.
Best form
Not
of civic
go
education.
for these forums. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lydia.
Thank you very much.
0719-012-600. That's the phone line to call in, and also you can comment on Facebook, Spice FM KE.
I tend to look at institutions, if we're just going to use Kenya as an example, and I've said time without number that, with the policies, those technocrats have come up with these policies, the institution on its own, just remove the people, remove the bodies from these institutions. They are actually well set up, well defined in terms of what their mandate for fulfillment is. Unfortunately, add humans and then we have things going in the wrong direction. But I do believe that in order for these institutions then to run properly, with what we have seen in this country, we then need personalities who then are focused and results achievement oriented to get these institutions to run in the manner in which they ought to. And I think we do need personalities with that focus to get it done right, because the vehicle, the institution, that we have. The agencies, we have. The ministries, we have. But we just can't seem to run them right, because a lot of times we've had individuals who then are not focused. People, yes, I keep saying, who have their fingers up their noses, they're not really sure what they're supposed to be doing. But if we have personalities then who are focused across board, because we have seen when we do have a focused individual, somebody who needs to achieve particular results, we seem to have standout organizations, and we can name them, we can number them off. So it seems that we do need personalities then to run institutions in the right manner.
We need institutions to run institutions. I want to go back to the Magufuli debate because it's an interesting one. I think what you were reading back to me, CT, was a PR piece from Tanzania, because if you look at things like the Washington Post and a lot of American companies, they've actually listed here that he was beginning to put some really heavy punitive tax measures and rattling a lot of companies within Tanzania. This is as far as recently as just last year. And if you look at the FDI, the foreign direct investment, there's a graph I'm looking at here, and you can see the decline. So they say he started off as a strong guy, but because of the lack of control and it being personalized governance over institutionalized governance, he actually chased away investors. So I was giving you an example of when this leadership can go too far. Because he's a populist.
Some companies went to the Washington Post and they had their article written.
It could have been.
They had their own article written.
It could have been, but they have the facts and figures. Whereas CT was reading a .tz website, citizen.tz, saying actually investor confidence has gone up.
No. This particular report even said the slight improvement was Tanzania moved from a position of 116
on the World Bank
to 113.
The ease of doing business report.
Yes.
This is a World Bank.
Okay, no. There has been reported improvement on some level, but in terms of chasing away investors, that I'll tell you for free, a lot of people were very rattled by
How many?
Of course, those that were operating under the previous regime and were eating.
Look,
of course they'd go.
No, it wasn't them. It was punitive taxes.
There was one example that was given of a certain organization that was extracting gold. Remember?
Yes.
What they were doing was simply taking all the earth and soil and exporting it.
Exporting the entire
earth. Yes, exactly, without extracting the gold. So what it meant was they could pay a value on that earth that was not commensurate with the gold deposits within it.
Yes.
And what they said was, no, excuse me, please stop that. We want that. Yes, stop.
Get the gold
out. Then let's discuss the gold and then let's proceed forward with it. Now, of course, that was a company that knew what they were doing.
And the president didn't just do that. I mean, he used, of course, the institutions.
Yes.
He has made the announcement, and then the whole process then goes through the institutions. How do we tell how much gold is here? How do we weigh the gold? How do we come up with the taxes? He didn't say, you guys, you need to be paying 50,000.
No, and more importantly,
No.
he's supposed to be looking after the welfare of his citizens of Tanzania, not the
company.
No. The investors bring about jobs. We all need FDI in Africa. He also had a falling out with Dangote, who had a cement company there. And because of, increasing regulations and so on, Dangote had to leave. Now, these are the people who come and create employment. So you're adversely affecting your citizenry as well. It may seem like you're fighting corruption. I'm just talking about some of this happened. It's not my opinion.
Yes, it happened.
Right?
And,
So
and did
I'm not
someone not come and
advocating
take
for
over that
it.
place?
I'm not
So,
advocating for it.
So how many companies have actually gone into Tanzania since Magufuli took over? So we've talked about the ones that left.
Yes.
We also need to talk about how many new companies
Have come in.
in to invest in Tanzania under the presidency of John Pombe Magufuli.
Now, I want to give you some of his dictatorial approaches, of which, of course, I have no problem
By
with.
the way,
Give
Jerry,
us
as
one.
an advocate,
As an advocate, as an
in case you
advocate,
were wondering.
You're wondering.
No. I mean,
Give
I
us
would
one
need
as we go into the top of the
in-depth
hour.
statistics to know how many companies have gone into Tanzania. I'm not that interested in Tanzania and the economy there. But since we're discussing personalized
All right.
leadership,
So you come back and tell us that. I also have Thomas Otieno is calling in from Kisumu. Thomas, we're going into the top of the hour and then we'll come and pick you. So maybe you can call back in about a minute. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We have Jerry Thorn Nduoko, CT Mugana. I'm Eric Latif. It's now coming up to 9 o'clock. Remember, you can contribute to this conversation 0719 012 600 or also post your comment on Facebook, Spice FM KE, and Twitter at Spice FM KE, hashtag The Situation Room. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice it.
Another one in for the count on Kiambu Road. There's an accident around Edenville, and this is causing traffic from Kiambu Road all the way to the junction of the Thika Superhighway. So that is what is slowing you down. If you're further up the road and you're wondering why traffic has suddenly stopped, there's an accident just ahead. Still quite slippery and wet conditions on that side of the city. So asking everybody once again to be very, very careful. All right, in Westlands, around the General Mathenge Road, there's some potholes, and so people are not quite sure how deep that is. So yes, we have another accident where two vehicles have collided because they actually did collide in a pothole. Bagathi Way, coming off of Langata Road and heading towards the City Mortuary roundabout, is giving us some traffic vibes as well. So you're going to have to sit it out. Langata Road traffic is quite the mess this morning. It's at a standstill, still after half an hour, not moving, literally bumper to bumper. So we have a gridlock in several parts of the city. Jogo Road is not behaving so badly. A little bit of a better situation on Mombasa Road. Let's see what it is in different parts of the city. Getting into the city centre, though, we had a bit of a gridlock on Kenyatta Avenue, but that seems to have cleared up right now. Heading out of the city is not much of an issue. 0719 012 600. Let us know what you see and we'll share.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorn, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to
2
start
minutes
your
to
day.
9 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? So we've opened up the phone line 0719 012 600. Thomas Otieno in Kisumu, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
good morning.
Yes, I think I love the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, I wanted to contribute about the institutions that we have and the personalities that we have. Now, I would say that we have got we are short of individuals with the right mentality to actualize what is spelled out in our institutions. Yeah, because you realize that before Mishuki, for example, was in transport, nobody had brought in the idea of safety belts and was very strict and wanted to create an impact on the industry of roads.
Yeah.
We had previous ministers. Now that is where personality stands out when there is a mess and somebody comes out bold to rectify it and come up with the solutions. That is when we see a great personality.
Personality helping the institution.
Helping the institutions.
Okay.
The institutions and the personality must work in handy. Read about the Vision 2030. We have a very good and a wonderful picture of the country in 30 years to come.
Yep.
But we are limited in terms of personalities to actualize that vision. But if we had got people who wanted to create an impact and leave this country better than they found it, then the institutions won't be having problems.
Right. Thank you.
What, for instance, yes, okay.
Thank you very much, Thomas. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600.
I tend to agree with that. I mean, even if it looks like being quite simply in the way in which it's being applied, but I would tend to say yes. And if we have a repetition of the way a personality then runs an institution, or some of the things that they bring into play by virtue of the fact that they were in a position of leadership, you would tend to see that the next person who would come in might want to then make sure that it is continued or that action continues to take place. And I think that it comes about through, a focus, definitely, yes, ambition, having a deliberate way of doing things. And we've seen that. And I think that, yes, because we have, unfortunately, a lot of times institutions that would be dormant in their operations. And if you have a personality coming in and firing things up, in our case, in a lot of countries where we operate in developing economies, as it were, we need individuals who are going to come in and spur action in these institutions. We do.
Do you think that perhaps some of these quotas that we have to meet in terms of tribal positions and appointments, do you think perhaps they interfere in that you don't get the best person for the position because it's not based on merit? It's important that
your guy gets into
a
power.
Luo is seen to be placed in this ministry, for instance, so that we have that balance, the idea of inclusivity. And then, of course, so that's one factor, but also the politics that they find there already. Sometimes it becomes quite difficult to navigate around that. So you can find some ministries it's easy to handle, whereas some ministries you get in there and they're playing second fiddle to yet another ministry, for instance, or between the DP and the presidency, the politics that might be there. So I think maybe those are two things that could hinder a potentially good leader, when he gets in, not a potentially good leader, but could hinder potentially good leadership. First of all, the fact that maybe it's not the best man for the seat because we've got to reach this quota that is an unspoken convention that X amount must be this, so that Kikuyus are not seen to be the ones, at the helm of everything. Maybe the Kikuyu is the best person for that seat. But because we can't be seen to be ruling everything, and I'm speaking, hypothetically for the sake of argument.
But I don't think that eventually plays out if results are what we judge people by. We may start and say there seems to be a preponderance of this community here. But if they're performing, they're performing.
Exactly. If you have results, positive results, then they're
everyone knew that the late John Michuki was a Kikuyu. He couldn't be anything else. In fact, you couldn't get more Kikuyu than that man. But that man's results.
No, what I mean is
volumes.
Sometimes maybe in a position of leadership, so in another ministry, for the sake of not putting a Kikuyu or a Kalenjin, given the politics of today, and you all understand the context.
Example.
So let
me give you an example. The Interior Ministry for the longest has gone to southern communities. Right? Yes. So it has gone to either Maasai or people from the Nilotic sites.
It's always been Maasai. I mean, we had Olelenko at some point.
Yes.
Now, no offense, he's a governor now, but the guy was coming from a catering background.
And then the late Major General Kaiseri was there, and then he was replaced. Now, when you see a Kisii man who's been brought in, and the first question was, it's only that they had seen this Kisii man in education, and now people are a bit
we've seen him.
We've seen his results. What he's been
So
able to
there is a
achieve.
prime example of
about-
what I'm trying to illustrate today,
and you
whereby
see,
we
and-
can miss out on very good leadership because of the tribal politics that
It's
we need
also
to
an
balance.
example of what CT is saying.
Yes.
That as long as the leader is actually good and he can deliver,
And
people
who
will
appointed
not-
him, the president. So it was the president who was good and could deliver and
And with-
ensure that we counter.
The same president has appointed the others. So,
Yeah.
so let's talk about this particular gentleman called. Okay, so it's about you have a leader. As long as that leader is strong, then the issue of what tribe he comes from sort of gets diminished.
Because if you go back to Mishuki, for example, with what we saw, the change that came about in transport, so I don't think anybody ever said this is fantastic, and it's because he was a Kikuyu that he was then able to do it. It didn't come into play at all.
No, it didn't.
and
No, you must
from across the
understand my
country-
point and what I'm saying. And I think Eric has highlighted it somewhat, whereby I think tribal politics can actually hinder the best leadership that would be available to us because
It
things have to
can
be balanced.
if the leaders go around selecting people who do not bring out the best that they should.
And well, it could be that they know there's the best guy for
And
the
as
job,
soon
but
as
he
you
can't be
notice-
put there because that docket belongs to a certain community, for instance.
Yes, but the
Also-
leader of that community, if they choose someone who's competent, people won't kick a fuss.
No, you can
But
be a
if-
tribal leader.
look,
it doesn't make you a good
If you're talking
minister
about
or
cronism, because our politics is about cronism, and you put your buddy,
Yes.
who defines incompetence, okay, or even redefines it, then of course it will tarnish your name because you're the person who's put that person in that position, and yet you may have other cronies who could actually do
Have done
a
the
good job.
Interesting. And what about the politics of the day? So what they go and find inside the docket? Because when you go there, you don't move with your people. You go and find a setup
find a
and
system.
structures. And so
I
when
think
you start
that's where now a strong individual
Is
actually
needed.
helps that institution, because an institution has been crippled by internal politics, by that whole incompetence within.
So how
when
do
you
we
have a strong
find or identify these strong individuals?
Usually, these people tend to have a track record.
Right.
And you don't have to look far. You'll tell when this person was here. This is what they did. When this person was, you can tell.
And it's usually,
So
and
why
again,
didn't
it's
we
not
use-
about what people say. That's true. It's not. Somebody can come here and talk up a storm for days, but if you look at what they've been able to achieve in positions that they've held previously, you
can
tell whether this person is going to be a good fit.
Yes.
Why
And you
didn't
can
we
make
use
a
that with
decision then
Kidero?
based on that.
Sorry,
Why didn't we use that, looking at the track record as the indicator with somebody like Kidero?
who's we?
Even we voters, we clearly voted for him. I'm speaking for Nairobi County.
Those
This
of you
is-
who voted for him.
Yes.
I mean, if we looked at his track record, Mumias had come down. It was in the public space, wasn't it? In the public domain. Everybody knew about it, but we were still happy to vote
Actually,
this man in.
you're answering your own question, and you're answering it well.
I'm asking why we
Politics,
didn't.
and I'm going to explain to you. Let me explain to you what you've said. Politics came into play. And then what was the narrative? You want someone who has managerial qualities. You want someone who has a white collar capacity. Yeah? The opposite narrative was used against Sonko. Remember?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, when you discuss these leaders, are you discussing appointees, so the executive, for instance?
It doesn't matter.
Or do you talk about governors and so on?
Jerry,
Because
it
I think
doesn't-
there's a
Somebody
big
selected them.
difference.
Jerry,
Regardless of whether-
it doesn't really matter.
Even a chief officer in the
Because
county.
with
It doesn't
elected
really
leaders,
matter.
I can see where the disconnect is with regards to the actual quality of leadership and them being voted in because
their
of things.
gravitas.
Absolutely, because it's very easy to rile people up. Elections, you've got money, you pump money into that. Kenyans are very gullible and very willing to jump on a bandwagon and go with the mass hysteria and euphoria. And then they don't actually look at the qualities. So that's the first thing. Secondly, they look at the tribe and the party. So they're not looking at leadership qualities yet again. So this is why you'll
Jerry,
get leaders who don't have the quality that
we had the
you speak
governor
of.
of Laikipia who came here. Okay? That man won on an independent ticket. Did he not? In a region that is Jubilee. Is it not? Now, what does it tell you? The voters looked and said, no, actually, we think this guy can do the job. But from what we saw when he came here, he had a certain personality. The guy, but what I liked he had clarity.
Yes.
Whereas we have Sonko, whom you like. I also
Yes, I
don't
do.
have too much of a problem. But he's a
Song-
populist.
It doesn't matter.
No, it matters because you cannot then come and give
Is
the
he
sort of
helping the
leadership that you
institution that
talk
is
about.
Nairobi County?
Absolutely.
If is he helping? Yes.
How?
Yes.
Is he delivering?
Yes.
So,
No.
So you're putting him. So you're putting Sonko here, and John Mishuki here.
Yes. Actually, yes. Actually, yes. Actually,
CT,
yes.
no.
Yes.
No, I'm not even wavering on that one.
Okay.
It's a yes.
Let's hear this.
It's a yes in this sense. John Michuki got a docket that other people had held, right?
Which they managed to.
He didn't have one, but the one that we talk about was when he had transport.
Right.
Okay? And he looked and understood that there's something called public transport here which needs to be realigned. Now, he realigned it, right? John Michuki, transport, stop there. Let's bring in Sonko, governor of Nairobi.
Party
right?
after party, that one.
Okay.
That was dancing.
Yes. And you're asking me,
And he found an institution that.
had many issues.
Yes.
Just like John Michuki had. Similarity there. Now, the projects that he set out to achieve or to complete, my question to you, has he done these things or has he not? Because we're talking about what the person has done. If you're going to introduce the politics, that'll be now a different discussion.
Give us one project that he set out to do.
The roads that he set out to build in Eastlands, stadiums that he set out to build, marketplaces that he set out to build.
Cartels that he said to stop.
So there's a market. There's a
wait.
market in Westlands.
Let's focus.
There's a market
on-
in Westlands that has been incomplete for over 6 years.
Yes.
Right? It started in the previous administration.
Yes.
It almost started under Kibaki.
Yes.
It has not been completed.
Yes.
And there's no work going on.
Okay, let me start again and said projects which he set out to complete.
One of them was that one, to complete
He hasn't
the project.
completed
Yes.
it. Is it the only one he has not completed?
No,
Or
it's
are
not.
all his
Let-
projects
let's-
not complete?
let's-
City Market
no,
was
let's
among the
use-
projects that he wanted to finish, all
Yes.
right, to modernize City Market and Wakulima Market.
Yes.
What work has been done at Wakulima Market?
I do not know, but
He's
tell
going to
me.
phone in at this rate and he'll take up
No,
all
no.
the airtime. Let's no.
No. I want us to continue.
He's in the building. actually.
Oh, he is he?
Has some work begun?
City Market is now 24 hours.
No. I'm asking the question because Eric clearly is furthering
It
an
began
argument.
6 years ago. That's what Eric is saying.
Yeah, but
But
this
my
gentleman
point
wasn't a
is,
governor 6 years
I
ago.
wanted
Yeah.
I wanted to give
No
you
work
an
has been done.
Yes, how long has he been governor?
since 2017.
Yes,
2017.
Two
Yeah.
years.
It was 2 years.
Two
yeah.
years.
Yes,
Right.
yes. So, how long
So we
into
wait
his
for 2022.
No, how long into his ministership did Michuki initiate changes? It wasn't in the first year. It was after the second year.
Okay,
The-
you've
the
really
point I'm
fought
trying
for
to make is
Sonko.
this.
Hold on, let's
I'm
go back
not
to what the
fighting.
argument is.
Please. You are asking me questions, I'm answering directly. If you want us to look at the failings of even one John Michuki, we will find them.
We'll find many.
Okay? That is not what
The
I'm
reason I
focusing on.
okay, now,
Group is one of
the reason
Yes.
I brought Sonko up, the reason I brought Sonko up is I think he's a clear example of when, because of populist ideals, for the sake of campaigns and for the sake of getting elected, you actually get the seat, but you don't have the leadership qualities that are needed to deliver leadership for an institution. That is another example. That's why I'd asked CT earlier. Are we talking about appointed leaders or elected leaders? With elected leaders, it becomes very difficult because people get carried away. Somebody like Kivuda Kibwana would be very difficult to elect if you didn't know him or his track record. Perhaps he's not as vocal, as outgoing, his PR stunts aren't as great as Alfred Mutua and so on. So maybe the campaign trail could have failed him, for instance. It's an example of where we would have lost out on great leadership.
But let's take again look at, say, Charity Ngilu. How is it that she managed to become governor? I'm not talking about her track record. She had a track record.
Yes.
Now, there are people who will complain and say, no, when she was the Ministry of Water,
Things went south, right?
no, her county benefited from her being in the ministry. Some would say disproportionately. When she was the Ministry of Health, her county benefited. Again, some will argue disproportionately. Other factors that could have benefited other people went to her county. But her people judged her efforts as useful to them.
Yes, because they saw the results of her being in a
Yes,
position of power.
and this is a politician, and this is how Kenyans view these things. She had done something for them, and so they figured
she can do something for the rest of
now
them.
that she's governor, the narrative has changed somewhat. She has problems with her MCAs. But many governors have problems with their MCAs.
Kivuza Kibwana had problems with his MCAs.
Yes,
and everything was sent
she
to,
did.
to the
His
vote.
life was threatened.
Yes.
I'm saying this. I am saying that even when it is elected leaders like the Nairobi governor, he will get attention because he's the Nairobi governor, and of course his own antiques now put him in the limelight, probably more, but that's the life he has chosen. Is he someone who seems to be doing something about the county? And I'm saying yes, he is. Is he trying to complete projects? I'm saying yes, he is. I am not saying that this is someone who has done wonderful things. I am saying he's an example of someone who's actually trying to do things.
You know, everybody that you talked about is trying to do something. Okay? Now, trying to do and coming up with excuses of, I can't do it because of the institutions, or,
No,
I can't do it because I don't have
I'm
enough
not
money.
even going in that
or
direction.
because, this ministry does not get enough budgetary allocation. That is one thing or the other. The strong leadership is when you actually deliver, right? That's why we're judging them. We are looking, and you said, we shall know them by the fruits of their labor.
Yes, you shall. Let me ask the question. Has the man, for instance, improved, say, the income or the revenue that is raised in the county of Nairobi?
That's true, yes. And then now you have city council or Nairobi County workers being paid on time, whereby you would have...
I'm
That's
just-
one example.
If you're talking just results.
In terms of results.
Results, yes.
Now,
You see, the argument that we actually, the discussion we have here, whenever the governor of Nairobi comes into a discussion, it's not his performance. It's
his
what,
personality.
yes, it's what he's perceived to be and what he represents. And the garments he likes putting on and the way he presents himself, whether it is on video or YouTube or the
I
other,
can't believe you're sitting here defending
or
it.
the other social media. Now, that also comes into judgment. And there are people who feel a governor shouldn't dress like that.
Yes,
a
the
governor
governor of a
shouldn't look like that.
of a
So it also forms part of our
We need a
discussion.
technocrat to run somewhere like
Bas.
Nairobi. We
A
need a
metropo-
technocrat.
You-
People will
Now,
judge.
Metropolitan
People will
Nairobi.
judge.
No.
People
Given
will
what
judge.
Nairobi
Thank
is,
you.
How many
Here we
markets?
are.
How many
And I
markets do
finished
you
my
have in
sentence before I was
Nairobi?
proved right. There we are.
How many markets now? Now, me, I'm giving the other. How many markets do we have in Nairobi? How many new markets do we have in Nairobi? That's one we'll ask. We'll ask about how many new roads do we have in Nairobi? How many have been carpeted, right? We'll ask about all these things that really matter. How much of water extension services have we seen? How many new areas have been connected to piped water in Nairobi?
Listen,
How much
let's go
water
back.
is there
Let's
in
go
Nairobi?
back to the leader.
We'll talk about leadership, and then we'll be
We
able
will.
to judge them.
What
by
are
the
his
fruit of their labor.
credentials? Because Nairobi is a complex dynamic. We're back to this conversation we had on Friday. What are Sonko's credentials? Given Nairobi, and this is why I said you need a technocrat. You need somebody who understands. We're not going to put somebody as a CEO here because he's popular with the cleaners
Who
and
is
us.
we?
us.
When you
No,
say
let's say I'm
we,
saying let's
we
say us.
is
Us
who
are the
exactly?
standard group. I would not put somebody.
She
say
voted-
I own.
she
say,
voted for him.
Say
No, she
I.
didn't.
Just to remind
Hold
you.
on.
No, she didn't.
Say I
She
voted for
didn't.
Sonko. I did. I
did.
voted for Sonko. I voted for my party.
She voted for Jubilee.
Yes.
After
Thank you. She
party,
didn't
after
vote for
party.
that.
then you got the party.
I voted for my
Her
party.
views
Absolutely.
on this gentleman changed in this very chat forum here. Yes.
No, I'm allowed to revise my
She
position.
didn't think
on
highly of him
CT,
at all.
When he called in, I think there was a soft spot. I was a bit sympathetic.
Felt
He's a
sorry
nice
for
guy,
him.
but it doesn't mean that he can run Nairobi County. You need a
You had a
technocrat, and this is
technocrat
something
in the
else.
last 5 years. How
This
far
is-
did we go with that one?
That wasn't a true technocrat. That was
And
also a
who's a
fag.
true technocrat? Who is a true technocrat?
No, we need a good technocrat. Yes, we had one, but I think it was somebody who was
My
corrupt and
discussion
perhaps
was
more
about
involved in
personalities
enriching himself.
versus the power of the office.
We've had technocrats at the Treasury.
So when
Yes,
we look
we
at the
have.
personalities, I think
We
it's
only have
important we take.
technocrats.
And,
Hold on.
and some of them are in court.
Yes.
When we look at the personalities that we're putting into institutions, we must understand the magnitude of that institution and whether that personality can actually undertake what is needed in order to discharge his mandate for that institution and hence his people. When you look at Sonko and you look at Nairobi County, I don't care which way you look at it, he's bitten off more than he can chew. I'm sorry, we need a technocrat in Nairobi.
You know, Jerry, that is the narrative that you had when Igathe was his deputy. That this is the technocrat who's... That man has been running business entities running a political entity is a totally different kettle of fish.
And it shouldn't be. This is the problem. It shouldn't be a political thing.
Oh.
He's very good at garnering support. Nairobi County should not be politicized, whereby we're electing a leader. I said this before. I said it should be somebody who is appointed. It should be a ministry. But back to leadership. Some institutions are too big for individuals. Especially
Okay.
when they don't have the checks and balances,
All right.
for instance, that you have with the presidency.
Some institutions are too big for, again?
For individuals and personalities. I think
see.
Nairobi
So-
as an institution, if we take it as an institution, if we're going to label it as that, I think it's far too big and overwhelming for personality, especially politics personalities.
Rudy Giuliani, Michael Bloomberg, and the kind of institutions.
Now let's
that
look
they've
at their
held
background in terms of whether they're economists and what have you, what their background has been. But if you look at I don't want to go too far back into Sonko's background, but if we do go far back enough, I mean, integrity issues start to arise. We've got to be very careful with individuals and institutions.
If we go along that road about integrity, we're going to go through a very dark hole here.
I think we're getting to a point where we're actually in agreement here. That the personality determines the performance of that institution.
Yes.
It depends.
I do think so. The personality,
and
whether it's negative or positive, the individual, the personality actually now dictates what direction that institution is going to go in, whether negative or positive.
I gave the example of the presidency, where because of limitations and because of the structures that we have of democracy, there can be a perception that the personality is not doing what he's supposed to do. And we had that for the longest, where people felt the president wasn't fighting graft, where you can see his will. He's determined, he's focused.
We felt he wasn't because he wasn't.
He was.
Now that he's fighting it, we can see he's fighting it.
Before that, he was speaking about it.
Yes, talking.
Now we can see
he's
fighting
it.
Right. Okay.
There's a difference. 24 minutes after 9 o'clock, this is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. The phone lines are always open, 0719-012-600. And also the conversation happens on Facebook, Spice FM KE. Our Twitter handle is Spice FM KE. And the hashtag is The Situation Room. Good morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It's 25 past 9. This is The Situation Room. My name is Eric Latif. We have Siti Muga, Jerry Thorne Nduoko. So we've come to consensus. Personality, institution, personality important to drive institution.
Look, there's a gentleman who was known for the longest time. People actually knew him more than they knew the presidents. There's a gentleman called Henry Kissinger. Why? Henry Kissinger stood out. He towered even above his, and he had his position over two presidencies.
Secretary, yes, he did.
Yes, Nixon and Johnson. But he was known. Why? It's because of the things he did and the person that he was. And he was considered brilliant.
And even after his terms, then he went on to actually, a lot of what he wrote thereafter turned to form a lot of the policy that the US uses today, and the thinking that the US administration is guided by.
He became a thought leader in that particular field.
Right.
For the longest time. Institutions were built around his processes. Now, that's an individual. He never sought political office. Didn't want to be anybody's president, didn't. Now, if you go through the histories of many countries, you will find that that same personality has also led many countries down a very dark rabbit hole. The two best examples we have in Europe were Mussolini and Hitler. They were personalities.
Yep.
And because of their personalities, they took their countries in a certain direction. There's a gentleman called Franco, who was in Spain.
I think Amani wants to ask you a question. Amani, good morning.
Yeah, good morning again.
Good morning.
I just have a question, one question.
Yes.
Our executive has this drive for fighting corruption, which is good. All right, they move from talk to drive, which is good, and focus. However, the same executive is reported constantly to undermine the judiciary by not adhering to judicial judgments. They actually break the law. So, there's a very serious contradiction there, and therefore they're not taken seriously. And it goes back to the personality of the person who heads that executive. How serious are they?
Right.
That's the question.
Which
Thank
laws?
you.
Give
Which
me an
court
example.
orders?
Yes, give me an example.
Which court orders has the president?
As the
disobeyed?
executive.
The
Or the
executive.
executive.
Yes.
Executive, yeah. Yeah, those work for him.
Yes.
Yeah, whether it's Matiangi, whether it's whoever, constantly we keep hearing this. Even just recently, the business community had said that the courts had said that certain tax should not be put in place until it's been heard, and then the executive goes ahead and pushes it and starts punishing
Yep.
the business community. So there are many things. I mean, let's start from Miguna, So until now, it's a constant.
Yeah.
And
true.
that's what I'm saying. They're undermining themselves. And it sort of proves that the personality has an issue. Because it should be so focused that all the way, all through the chain, it's consistent.
True. Thank you, Amani. 0719-012-600. That's the number to call in. What's your response to that?
My response to that, and I think we saw with the annulment of the elections, that is something that perhaps could have been ignored. I know that's a huge statement to make, but I
How
think
would
that
it
was
have been ignored exactly?
that was the president
I mean,
making a
spin it better,
statement that
Njeri.
no.
That
He
spin
was
isn't
upholding
working
the
well.
very tenets of
He
democracy
could
and
have
the
ignored
separation
by
of powers.
saying he's not going to participate in the
And
election.
the independence.
Or he's not going to adhere to the rulings
No,
of the
there
court?
would have just been nothing if he wanted to ignore them. So
How?
this is an
But
example of when he
IBC
has
as an
not
independent
ignored.
institution would have called an election. So you're saying that the candidates would have said,
what I'm
we're
saying-
not going to participate.
What I'm saying is the president, in accepting the decision of the Supreme Court, whether or not he agreed with it, he accepted it.
Did he have
I
a
think
choice?
was a very clear example of the fact that he does respect the independence of the judiciary. He didn't fight it.
Miguna.
Mm.
There was a court case. There was a court order. And the court order was produce the man here and let us hear
There was
him.
a lot of politics within that as
see?
well.
But
No.
see, the issue-
Let's,
but the issue here
let's
is
be honest.
the
In fact,
issue-
I hear it's your friend Raila who kicked him out.
But the
No,
issue
My
here,
friend.
Jerry,
No.
Jerry, you're spinning the issue. You've been asked a simple question.
the issue was
you're
court
spinning
order.
it.
What Aman is actually saying,
Bring him
that
here.
Yes,
Yeah.
there are very many instances where we see the executive, not necessarily the presidency, the executive as a whole.
If you remember with
ignoring court
Miguna's
orders
case,
or going
Miguna was
against court
actually
orders.
asked to re-register, which all of us who have been in that situation have had to do in order to be Kenyan. So yes, you can't lose your citizenship, but there was actually a process that you go through where you have to re-register, and it is a right, but you still have to go through this process. Miguna refused to do that, if you remember. Now, that is the reason he ended up where he was.
So was that the
Yes,
reason
the court
order was
ordered
ignored?
that you
The
cannot
point is the
lose your
court order-
citizenship by birth.
You know,
that is fine.
Eric,
but
Eric.
also, there was still the stipulation that in order to get your citizenship
The court
back,
order was simple: produce the man in court. That was it. It was
the
not
man
even
had
a
already
judgment.
been
Eric,
in
It was
the
not
air.
even a judgment.
No, he was here and he was in custody. He was in
Eric.
custody here and they refused to bring him to the
Eric,
High Court
smell
as
the
was
coffee.
asked.
Yeah.
Smell the coffee. Jerry is not
The
going
spin
to
wheels
answer
are
that.
This is not
moving.
moving.
Forget it.
This is gonna stay right here where it is, right?
You are going to ask about a court order we all know
I think
about.
more often than
She's
not.
going to bring Raila into the discussion. The next thing I'm going to be told, my friend.
Yeah.
So ask another question. That one is not
And it
going
has
to be
brought
answered.
peace. And
Yes.
remember, there was a talk of secession in the country at that time.
So what
And
is the
remember-
quality of these leaders? What are some of the qualities in terms of the habits, tendencies? Is it integrity, or do they have a background that's not too clean and we're okay with it? What are we looking for when we look for these leaders,
No,
CT, that
it
you
is.
speak for?
That is your discussion. Mine wasn't that at all. I was simply saying this. I was talking about personalities. You brought in ethical and morality into it. I hadn't even gone there.
We can
Well,
actually
I
go
think
there. Let's go there
every
now. because-
personality, there's that facet
what is it?
of ethics and
What is the
morals.
traits? What is the traits?
I was focusing on performance.
Right.
And I was saying,
But do they have something? Maybe
And
there's something in their
personalities.
DNA or in their personality, something in their upbringing, something
It's-
that has
it's-
exposed them to this.
it is possibly that, but then there are things that people are actually born with.
Okay.
It's genetics. It's something that someone has. There's some behavior that
Nature,
one could
not
argue
nurture.
they learn. Yes, there's something they
28
learn.
minutes to 10 o'clock. This is a situation room. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads.
Traffic.
Coming off Mombasa Road, we have good reports. It's not so bad. After everything was cleared up, getting into the city centre will not be too long of a wait. The emergency exits are not even helping on Thika Road. It was a standstill, and that's what we're still talking about now. City Mortuary roundabout coming off Ngong Road and actually getting onto Ngong Road is really slow, not moving as fast as you'd like, but the cops are on the scene trying to help, as it were. From survey, use a service lane if you can on Thika Road. The service lane seems to be proving not so difficult roundabout now. Apart from that, everything is not so bad now. Getting around up to 9:30, it's better than it was about 2 hours ago. So that's what traffic looks like now. Hopefully, it will not be so bad through the day. You can tweet us, call us, send us a message.
96.1 Spice FM. Kisi.
In Mombasa, it's 87.9. In Kisumu, 102.5. 96.0 in Nakuru. 96.7 Eldoret. 90.9 in Nyeri. 97.7 in Malindi. We live stream this show every morning on Spice FM KE Facebook, Spice FM KE YouTube, and www.spicefm.co.ke. The conversation we're having now is also happening on our social media handles, including Twitter handle Spice FM KE via the hashtag The Situation Room. It's about leadership, and also now today being Succession Mondays. It's also something we'd always talk about, Succession Mondays.
Absolutely. Of course, we spoke about BBI for the longest this morning. We went into it, and Eric was suggesting, which of course doesn't show in my crystal ball, so it won't happen. He was suggesting that we have a further conference to reach a consensus on the BBI. Now, I feel with the BBI that we're actually... It's going to be a divisive tool, sadly. We can already see that there's two factions. There's people who are for and people who are against. What? We still don't know.
The process.
It's not the process. I think it's even what's contained in it. Of course, there's been talk of introducing a new parliamentary system, the idea of proportional representation, along with quite a few other changes that are being considered by the BBI. The initiative, of course, comes about as a result of the tension that was around in the country after the 2017 elections. And of course, thereafter, the fact that we felt that every election, and this was cyclic, this division and tension and near civil war we had in 2007, and something had to be done. Now, what I feel is this is yet something that is going to divide the country. That is the paradox here, sadly. And it's going to divide the country at a time where there's so much tension politically, because there's promises that have been made, apparently, for instance, to the DP, although Sabina Chege was here and he confirmed that the DP does not feel that the Kikuyu community owe him anything. He himself has said that. So I think we can actually close that case. That was a final nail in the head for that conversation, which we have had a number of times here in the studio. But I feel that given the context, of course, the Constitution should be a living document in that it should serve us. It's not for us to serve the Constitution, in that it should work for us. It's not for us to work to the Constitution. So the idea of amendments should come and go, and we should have discussions. It should evolve. But considering the tension around 2022, this might not be the right time to have a referendum. Absolutely.
So you think a referendum should come after 2022?
I think it should come perhaps after, as we go into 2027. It also gives the critics of the proposed referendum some weight. It lends credence to their criticism that we haven't given this constitution enough time to see it through. If we implemented all components of the constitution, all elements of the constitution, including Article 6 and so on integrity, then maybe we wouldn't see all these problems. So we find ourselves in a quagmire. It's a little bit of a conundrum, isn't it? Because we do need to change something. We don't want to be going through the same electoral tensions that we go through. We do need to create more seats at the helm, because some communities do feel left out. We do need to have a sense of inclusivity, not just for the different communities, but also gender-based. We talked about the fact that we would want to ensure that at the helm with the new system and new structures, we would also want to see women there. So we do need that. But sadly, we politicize these things and they become a tool and a weapon for us to divide each other. So the irony in this is that this document is about inclusivity, unity, one united Kenya, but we already have divisions as a result of the very document and instrument that we want to use to bring about this unity. So my crystal ball was showing me that there might be a delayed election in 2022 as a result of having had a referendum and having had to put the structures up that will need for the new governance systems that we'll have as a result of a yes vote from the referendum. So quite a few things it was telling me. First of all, that there will be the referendum, that we will get a yes vote, and there will be a change in our governance system. We'll move to a parliamentary system. We'll have proportional representation. But as a result of that, we might then have to delay the 2022 elections so that we can get systems in place to ensure that we then have these new governance structures.
So the life of the current government and current parliament will be extended.
I think so.
Just like the 2007 government. When do you see this referendum taking place? 2020, 2021?
2021.
2021 referendum. And you don't suppose that there'd be enough time?
Not enough time. And then we have things in the constitution, for instance, the IEBC having to have been fully constituted and functional 2 years prior to an election. So if you start to add those things up, you see that there'll be no election in 2022.
What do you see?
I do not see that crystal ball to begin with. So whatever prediction it has, I also cannot see.
What do you feel?
It is possible, but 2022 is 3 years.
2.
3.
We're at the end, darling. We're in
This is the end of
2022.
the second
20,
year.
21, 22. 3.
Precisely.
No. We're in 2020. Literally.
No, yes.
Literally.
But we have
We're in
not started it.
2020.
So January
We
to-
started in a few days.
So
We're in
let's go.
2020.
Let's count with me. January to December 2021. January to December 2021. 2. January to August 2023.
No.
3.
No. 20 January to January 2021. January to January 2022. We're there in 2 years.
Where is your...
There's some simple maths that I was taught.
Hold on.
That
In a few days we'll be at 2020.
When you're dealing with the fractions and it's above 5,
Round up.
you round up.
Yes.
This one is way above 5. 3.
Has been rounded.
No.
So you were saying it's 3 years ahead.
It's 2 years.
Okay, it's 1 year.
What's your point?
6 months.
3 months. Throw it in there. Who cares?
The point is this. Whenever the political establishment that is in power determines to see something through, they tend to. And they will, number one. Number two, the political tensions that we always have in this country are generated. There's nothing organic about it. People are wound up, narratives are spun, and people are put in a tiz. It is worked at. As for the issue of there being permanent divisions, you only need to look at the number of times we've had formal groupings called coalitions, the number of times they have broken up, regrouped, rearranged. It tells you of the mobility of the political class in this country.
And time is not usually a factor.
Time is never a factor. Whatever the political rulership, particularly right now, want, if we're to believe the narrative is they want peace. And the agenda they have for this peace is having a parliamentary system of government. And that is the direction they are going to go to. They are going to use the legal instruments. They are going to go through processes that are required by law so that we get in that direction.
Yep.
And because the peace narrative is being preached, it is readily received, it is readily accepted. Nobody wants turmoil. So even if we have a referendum, it'll go in the direction that the establishment wants it to go. This narrative that constantly attacks this narrative that sometimes focuses on the individuals, by certain individuals, it may have the effect of entertainment, but as for bringing in votes and guaranteeing that you'll have a following, in my opinion, it has next to none. Yes, it doesn't.
What are the reasons that would make an election be delayed? We saw in 2002, the election was actually pushed to 2003 because of several factors. Number one, the Constitution says elections in August.
Yes.
And by August 2002, not enough laws had actually been put in place to bring the Constitution to life. And that's why it had to move into the next year.
There you go.
So what laws are these that would need to actually put in place that would force us to
Well, first of
take
all,
a
we
lot
can
of time?
actually change the Constitution as we go into this referendum to allow us to delay
But why?
the next referendum. Because of the very same reason. You said in 2002 we weren't able to do what? Because they weren't
it's because
laws
of
in
the
place.
laws.
Laws weren't.
It's the
but given
timeline that had been put in place
given
so that
after
you can ensure that when you have an election, now the new system of government that has devolution, there are various acts of parliament that needed to be enacted. And by August, well, by the time, if parliament was actually to be prorogued, it has to be prorogued by May of 2002. And it was not going to be possible 1.5 years after.
So this could be the same thing, and it would be included in the Constitution to cover for it. This is exactly what I'm saying. With devolution, we said, well, there's a number of legal instruments that come into play to give effect to what we're trying to do here. So we must have these delays. And I think the exact same thing will happen with this referendum, whereby it will be included in the Constitution that these measures must be in place.
Reasons, not necessarily political reasons.
Oh,
we've been looking at the country that we are
absolutely. I've said it's for technical reasons.
We are cash starved, so we can't really run two national elections within a year.
What will happen is there'll be provisions within the Constitution that put certain stipulations in order for us to have an election. I think there'll be amendments on that. And you'll find we don't meet these criteria for quite a while. And so there will be a delay in having the elections. And it will work out for us very well politically, because it's about time that, we had a break from the elections. Especially, you can imagine, we're about to go into campaign mode and electioneering.
We've been there for a while.
But we're about to go into it full force with this
proper.
referendum. The electorate is exhausted.
But we're already in
That's what I'm saying. We're there already.
But can you imagine ramping that up where it's now official and you have proper campaigns for a referendum?
So let's open up the phone lines. The last 10 minutes of the show, 0719-012-600. Jerry Thorne's crystal ball this morning says
2022 will be delayed.
So there'll be a referendum before 2022, and then the 2022 election will be delayed.
Absolutely.
Do you see the same? And does it make sense to you? 0719-012-600. That's the number to call. And also you can contribute on Facebook, Spice FM KE, and Twitter. The hashtag is The Situation Room. Tag us on @Spice FM KE. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
14 minutes to 10 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have Nduoko, C.T. Muga, and Jerry Thorne. Today being Succession Mondays, she's looked at her crystal ball and it has told her that the 2022 general election is going to be delayed. Why? Because we are likely to have a constitutional referendum before then, and because of a new system of government coming into play, and some legal statutes actually having to be enacted by Parliament, then we cannot, in good conscience, practically, we would not be able practically to actually, get it done before August 2022. So this is a similar thing that happened in 2002. 2010, August, a new constitution is promulgated, and the new constitution required a lot of laws to be put into place so that the new constitution can come to life. And there was an entire schedule of the constitution that said what laws needed to come into place, what commissions needed to be established so that they can work on the laws that goes into Parliament, and Parliament debates them and passes them, and the President assents them into law. So of course, the election of 2002 should have happened, 2012 rather, should have happened in August 2012, which means that Parliament would have to be prorogued in around May. 2012. There was not enough time to actually enact all the laws by Parliament and go into an election in August. And that's why the matter was actually taken to court, and the court said, yes, it makes a lot of sense. We can interpret this and say the election of 2012 can be delayed, and you can extend the term of the current parliament and the current government by a couple of months. And that's why the election happened in 2013. The term of that first government under Jubilee was actually shorter than 5 years, because 2013 to August 2017 was less than 5 years. The next one should actually happen in August 2022. But now what you're saying, Jerry, is because of a referendum in between and the laws, if we actually say parliamentary system of government, then Parliament will have to come up with the laws that ensure that this comes to life. Not enough time.
Absolutely not.
It makes sense to me.
Do you see an election happening immediately after a referendum? You can imagine the structures that need to be put into place to give effect to the new amendments within the Constitution, especially if we're talking about changes to administrative governance law. Do you understand? Where we're changing from one system to another. There is no way we can have an election the following year. Absolutely no way.
Can the election happen at the same time as a referendum?
At the same time?
No. Yes.
No, it can't. Because with the referendum, what you're trying to do is you're trying to change certain laws within the country.
Yes.
So how are you going to do that at the same time
And
as
they're
then bring
coming
into
into
a new elected government, for example?
Can I answer that?
Yes.
Simply this way. So when you're going into the 2022 election, you're actually saying that in the next, the 2027 government is going to be a parliamentary system of government.
Well, you
And
have
that's
to
the
look at
question
the
that you're
intention
answering.
of the referendum in the first instance. And also people want to put something into effect.
Some
If you
kind of
voted for
immediacy
something,
that's being
you do
looked
want
for.
it to be put into effect as soon as possible if the country wants that. You have to look at the intention of the drafters or the originators of the referendum in the first instance. Why have we decided to go with a parliamentary system? It's because there was actually some ills that we were trying to cure as a country when it comes to elections. So if we're then going to face those very tensions that have brought us to the brink of civil war previously, then of course it renders the referendum obsolete, which we don't want to do. So you want to give it effect as soon as possible, which will still take time. There'll be a lot of laws that have to be put into place. There'll be a lot of politics that needs playing. So you'll find, people will be happy to delay it while they realign themselves, having done the referendum and so on. So in fact, I feel sorry for us as a country. I see us in perpetual electioneering mode for another 4 or 5 years now before we actually get back to deciding who will be president.
So why do you feel sorry?
Because it's exhausting. Do you not get exhausted with the perpetual electioneering
He's a
mode that we
political
seem to be?
animal.
But I love politics, but I get tired. It's time we discussed issues and policies. I want to see a policy being vetted or being battled against another policy where we decide actually this works better for Kenya, as opposed to leadership, as opposed to leadership contests throughout the 5 years. I'd rather we debate.
Well, I can see how people would get tired because we're constantly doing the same thing over and over and over again. However, if we're trying to get to the point where we say, finally, we have this ironed out, it's done, we're able to now govern in a certain way, then I think it's one of the sacrifices that then need to be made in order for it to happen.
It's not even a sacrifice.
Let it happen if that's what needs to be done.
When you have a situation where what our ills revolve around our politicking, then it's a good thing. Other people have alternatives which are far worse. I'd rather we just talked ourselves into exhaustion.
We keep talking.
It's okay.
If our politics was one that was based on ideologies, then yes. But these are tribal tensions.
Our
and they run
politics
very
are
deep.
based on ideology.
No, they're not. Our politics
they
are
are.
based on tribes, and we've had this discussion before, which
And,
run deep. And so
and
you
I'm going
find
to
there's a
go
lot
back-
of suspicion. It's not just a
Yes.
disagreement of sort of ways of looking at things and perceptions where one is left wing, one is right wing. No, these are deep rooted suspicions that lead to hate and even murder. We've seen that.
And you think they're not based on ideology?
Well, I mean, it depends what you want to interpret ideology as. My interpretation of it, or my definition of it, would be a philosophy, usually economic and social, that underpins a party's. This is if we're speaking of it from a political perspective, which is what we're doing now. So usually philosophical. That sort of underpins and gives direction as to a social economic policy of a party. That is what I
Within
would
a-
define.
within a
I would
political
define.
framework.
I would define ideology as within this context of today's conversation. Now, of course, you can have ideologies in love, ideologies in cooking, whatever you want. But we're discussing politics today, and our politics is not defined by ideology.
It is.
CT.
Economic policies that our politics revolves around is when our person is in power, we will get some. It's economic.
Absolutely. Okay.
It's
No, that's a
economic.
mentality. It's not an ideology because that doesn't happen. When your
But
person
my
is in
dear-
power, you don't get. So it's not even an ideology. This is purely a mentality that you will get.
An ideology is a thought process. And it's a thought process you can lend to economic issues, political issues, social issues, etc., etc.
Now, when we talk politically, we've got to restrict that and keep it to the
Oh, oh,
normative. What
oh,
we don't want to do.
oh.
No, we have to be normative
No.
here, CT.
Why
What you
do
don't
we
want
have
to
to
do is
restrict
start
it?
to philosophize. You understand exactly what I mean when I tell you they're not ideologically
But
based
I also
and they're
disagree
tribal
with you
based.
because you want the sophistry of what you call ideology to play here. And I'm trying to explain to you, I may appear like I'm being facetious, and I am, is that this thing called ideology has to be simplified. And most people, they will tell you they have an ideology. And this is what I'm trying to explain to you. And the ideology is based on personalities and individuals who represent communities.
That
That's
is
where it
not the
starts.
definition of ideology. I've got it in front of me, and it's not too far off from what I was saying. It's a system of ideals and ideas, especially ones which form the basis of economic or political theory and policy. So we actually have a definition here. We can use it and be broader because what you're saying is no, but the tribe is an ideology.
Everything you've said is that's how our people base their politics. It's on individuals who they feel represent everything that you're saying. The ideology is embodied in individuals. This is what I'm trying to tell you.
Do the individuals actually embody that ideology? Do they carry that ideology?
The individuals tend to embody ideologies that benefit themselves first.
Before anybody else, or the
And
party
then
of a
the
country
rest follow.
as a
Okay?
whole.
But
But
there has to be consistency. I mean, in
Oh,
ideology,
but there is
There's
consistency.
got to be No. You,
No, I think there has to be consideration
Eric,
for the
Eric,
people
there's
whom they
something
hope
I'm
to
saying
lead.
here that you don't seem to get. I am describing our country.
our ideology.
Yes, and I'm describing how our people view this. Why do you think perpetually we have the same discussion and the same thing? Because this is how it is seen.
Right.
Yeah, but is it the actual definition of ideology?
It
Let's
is.
just use the standard norm of what we understand by ideology because CT is philosophizing now. What we need to do is understand that our parties are not ideologically based.
They
They're
are.
tribally based.
No,
Now, if
They're
you want to call tribe an
personality-based.
ideology,
they
that's
are
something else.
ideology based.
They're not. If we look at ideology as
You have been